She thought she was dying, so she recklessly pursued the empire's most handsome and dangerous man. 3 months later, the doctor said it was a misdiagnosis. She looked up at the sky and cried, "I would rather die." Letty went to see a doctor because she wasn't feeling well. She was diagnosed with magic tolerance syndrome due to excessive magic power stored in her body, with only 3 months left to live. Not wanting to wait idly for death, Letty decided to make a bucket list and complete everything before she died. She first asked her personal maid Annie what she would want to do before dying. Learning that Annie wanted to buy lots of cake, Letty quietly made a note of it. However, her relationship with her family was poor. Her father and mother had sold her to a wealthy marquis. Her brother Leon inherited both the magic and family fortune, while she got nothing, even being deprived of her right to education. She was only taught to read because she needed to help her brother. When Leon saw Letty in the dining room, he became irritated, especially after hearing her mockery. He directly poured red wine over her head, and told their parents he wouldn't eat unless she left. As expected, their mother took Leon's side, watching the three of them enjoying their happy family moment. Letty felt that even if they knew she would die in 3 months, nothing would change. She didn't want to live like a fool and die in vain. She wanted to spend her remaining days doing what she truly desired. Letty picked up her pen and wrote down her bucket list. 1. Buy cake for Annie. 2. Earn money through her own efforts. 3. End the engagement with the Marquis gracefully. 4. Date a handsome man. 5. Travel to the places Leon always bragged about. She had always been a tool used by her family, but now she wanted to try living for herself. This way, she would have no regrets in life. The first wish was easily fulfilled. She immediately bought delicious cake for Annie. On their way back, their carriage got stuck in a mud pit. At that moment, Duke Candel's carriage approached from the opposite direction. That was the most powerful family in the empire, and the Duke was known as a monster. As the carriage shook, she saw a man lift the carriage with just one hand. Letty thought he was the Duke's coachman, and couldn't help but admire him. When she returned home, her Marquis fiancé, who was as old as her father, came to visit. Listening to Sedley's disgustingly oily words, Letty felt she could fulfill her third wish today, to cut ties cleanly with this repulsive man, because her parents favored sons over daughters. Even though their daughter possessed exceptional magical talent, she wasn't allowed to receive proper education. Her teacher, pitying her talent, had secretly taught her some techniques, and now was the perfect time to test what she had learned. After suspending Sedley in midair, Letty formally told him the engagement was cancelled. Her father and mother rushed in at the commotion. Although her father immediately dispelled the magic and stepped forward to apologize, he couldn't appease the humiliated Marquis. Suddenly, a loud slap landed on Letty's face. Her father angrily accused her of causing a disaster, as this marriage arrangement would have cleared almost all their family debt. Her mother also hysterically called her an ungrateful wretch, but they had forgotten who cleaned up all the messes in this household every day. However, her enraged parents were beyond listening to any words now. Her father even declared he would disown her. This was exactly what Letty wanted. For her, the most terrible thing was knowing she was worthless. She bowed to her parents in gratitude for raising her, and turned to leave with determination. Leon suddenly called out to stop her. He still held a grudge about Letty humiliating him at the dining table, mocking her as a fool who couldn't even use magic. He then launched a magical attack at her. The composed Letty merely waved out a magic circle casually. The next moment, Leon was buried in the ground. Ignoring his screams, Letty turned and left the Duke's mansion. She had accomplished 3 wishes in one day. Now only the 4th and 5th remained. She decided to first find work doing something she was good at to earn money. Letty excitedly ran to the Mages Guild, shouting if anyone needed a purification mage. Since purification magic required powerful magical support, if the target had greater magic capacity or stronger mental power, the purification magic would be completely ineffective. But this was child's play for Letty, who had excess magic power. However, the guild master dismissed her with just 2 words, "No" and "unnecessary," throwing her out the door. When it rains, it pours, just as she was about to check other shops. Her remaining possessions were stolen. The thieves, hearing that Letty was a purification mage, weren't afraid at all. Unexpectedly, a ball of flame appeared behind them. They saw Letty attacking while chasing them, but because they ran too fast to catch up, she prayed in her heart for someone, anyone, to help her. Then she saw the man ahead turn his face. In that moment, Letty felt she had encountered a god, although the man was devastatingly handsome. His body emitted a stench that made one nauseous. The 2 robbers recognized him as the monster Duke Candel just from the smell and overwhelming pressure. The next moment, they met their end. Letty stared at the man in a daze. So this was Zalahan Candel, from the Empire's most powerful family, and also the country's strongest swordsman. As a general, he had led soldiers to victory in a war destined for defeat, and due to his violent temperament, was known as Satan on the battlefield. But Letty only felt that his looks were practically criminal. Even with the strange smell, the moment she saw his face, it didn't matter anymore. She turned away to secretly rejoice. With looks like these, he must have dated many girls. Wouldn't that make him perfect for her criteria of wanting someone with dating experience? Zalahan was also observing the young lady before him. She looked like a noble's daughter but had no guards. Seeing her trembling slightly, he assumed she was afraid of him. Because of this unbreakable curse, even though he helped her, she would still fear him. Thinking of this, Zalahan felt somewhat angry. How much longer would he have to endure such prejudice? The young lady suddenly grabbed his arm, asking expectantly if he had a lover, because he was very handsome. So would he like to date her just for 3 months? This was something Zalahan had never encountered before, and the situation became quite awkward. Letty first introduced herself, then asked for his name. Although she already knew the answer, it was still polite to ask. Zalahan nervously gave his name. Letty sighed that even his voice was so pleasing, both deep and sexy. Such straightforward praise made Zalahan's whole body scream rejection. Was she making fun of him? Letty smiled brightly, saying she was very pleased to meet him, Zalahan. Just this simple call of his name, he hadn't heard it in 20 years. Letty continued, would he consider dating her? Just for 3 months. Zalahan finally calmed down. He pointed out that she must have seen how he had swung his sword at those men. Wasn't she afraid? Then he advised her not to joke with him while turning to leave. Seeing the young lady standing still without reaction, Zalahan thought she really was just joking. Who knew Letty was actually wiping her nosebleed? Thinking how sexy he was, she thought to herself, such an excellent man hasn't been claimed by me yet. I must make your life complete. Though she said this, finding him again became a problem. At a bar where Letty was drowning her sorrows, she keenly caught people nearby discussing Duke Candel. She casually walked to the men's table, hearing that the Duke was looking for a purification mage. What rumors? Letty joined their conversation naturally, sitting at their table. The man didn't find it strange and enthusiastically explained to her. Some said the Duke had a terrifying curse on him that made him smell like a rotting corpse whenever anyone got close to him. Letty finally realized, so that was the strange smell, though it wasn't as bad as the rumors suggested. The man chatted excitedly with his friends, even sharing his food with Letty. He explained that the Duke was searching for a purification mage through the Information Guild to break the curse, but because the curse was so severe, all previous purification mages had fled. And since purification mages were rare to begin with, they were hard to find. After hearing this, Letty understood the situation. As they say, you can't catch a tiger without entering its den. Her fighting spirit was ignited. Zalahan, just wait for me. She could already imagine the Duke acting like a little cat wagging its tail at her. A week later, Letty, who had coordinated with the Information Association beforehand, was right on time to intercept Zalahan when he came looking for a purification mage. I've reflected on my behavior. I was too forward that day, asking you to date me straight away. You must have been shocked. So why don't we start with an employer-employee relationship? Let me introduce myself again. Zalahan watched the enthusiastic Letty, thinking he had already warned her. She really was fearless. Letty lifted her skirt slightly. I am the Empire's premier purification mage, Letty Blanche. Let me help you purify your curse. The payment will include room and board. As she spoke, she had already pulled out a contract. Here, sign it. But Zalahan asked with a dark face if she could take responsibility for her words. If this was just a joke, she might not see tomorrow's sunrise. Letty gulped nervously at his aura, thinking that although she hadn't formally studied magic, she knew purification magic well. It should be fine. Besides, she was going to die anyway, so what was there to fear? So she suddenly grabbed Zalahan's hand. Without another word, she began casting purification magic, brilliant light surrounding them both. As black and gold light intertwined, the magic made a popping sound. Letty began to feel strained. She hadn't expected so much spiritual power to be absorbed. This curse was incredibly powerful, and her spiritual power was conflicting with Zalahan's curse, making purification even more difficult. As the light gradually faded, both Letty's physical and spiritual strength had been consumed by the curse. She let go of his hand and asked Zalahan to check. Zalahan's heart was pounding wildly, but he dared not hope. There had been too many failures. Since childhood, this curse had always accompanied him. He knew best the power of this curse. It was a curse that kept his body in a constant state of decay, emitting a nauseating stench of death. but as the bandages came undone, an unblemished white hand appeared. At this moment, Zalahan was incredibly shocked. This was the first miracle his body had ever experienced. Faced with Letty's contract again, though she was clearly fighting discomfort while smiling, he no longer hesitated. She was the only miracle who could help him break the curse. He couldn't miss this chance. Before the curse was completely gone, he absolutely wouldn't let her go. When Letty woke up, she was already in Duke Candel's mansion. Zalahan sat nearby. The contract mentioned I need to provide room and board, so I brought you here. If you feel offended, I'll find other accommodation immediately. I don't mind at all, thank you very much. Letty happily interrupted him. How could she object to such a perfect opportunity to be close to him? Zalahan then produced another contract. In that case, 2 copies of the contract, I'll keep the other one. Letty stared at his handsome face so close to her, excited to jump forward and snuggle, but unfortunately he nimbly dodged. Instead, she grabbed his hand and danced excitedly. Please take care of me from now on, I'll be good to you. This terrified Zalahan. We are just employer and employee, don't think too much of it. Letty asked him to use a more intimate way to address her. Lily, come on, say it once. Zalahan tensed up. He had never had the chance to use pet names for others. Feeling somewhat at a loss, he stood up. You fainted earlier. I came to check on you. Your luggage has been arranged. Since you're fine now, I'll take my leave. Letty was clearly disappointed. He looked like someone with plenty of dating experience, so why did he keep rejecting her? Perhaps he didn't like her type? But preferences could be changed, right? She grinned mischievously at Zalahan, making him shudder. After telling her to rest and that they'd talk tomorrow, he hurriedly left the room. After he left, Letty hugged her pillow in delight. She had already picked out names for their future children. Meanwhile, Zalahan, who had intended to lean against the door to compose himself, heard all her lovesick mumblings through the door. He was absolutely mortified. What kind of creature had he hired? The next morning, Zalahan was leisurely drinking his tea, but the woman's gaze before him was too intense, and he couldn't drink anymore. Do you have something to say? Letty leaned on the table with a love-struck expression. I waited for you this morning. Why didn't you have breakfast with me? Hearing this, Zalahan was startled again, even breaking the teacup handle. You actually want to eat with me? You must have quite an appetite. Letty didn't understand. So Zalahan spoke about his curse. He had been cursed by a dying person, making this curse even more powerful. Even if the person who cast it died, the curse wouldn't disappear. He had been wearing bandages with smell-isolating magic since he was 8 years old. The curse made his skin lose vitality and gradually rot. Even with purification mages, they could only slow the curse's progression, not completely break it. Seeing Letty's worried expression, Zalahan thought to himself, if you find it disgusting, you can run away, it doesn't matter, because I'll just catch you and bring you back. As long as the curse can be broken, I'll do anything. But Letty held his rotting hand and promised, I promise I will break your curse. Zalahan had never been treated like this before and didn't know what to say. He didn't understand why Letty wasn't afraid of him. Others would recoil in horror at the sight of his rotting skin, avoiding him like the plague. Logically, she should feel nauseated by this horrible stench, but she didn't. Instead, she looked at him with loving eyes, making even her selfish greed seem ordinary. Seeing Letty about to cast magic again, Zalahan quickly stopped her. He grabbed her wrist and pulled her close. Mage, I told you to stop. While wrapping the bandages back, he told her not to push herself, and Letty explained she was just checking because her spiritual power wasn't enough right now. Although the left hand looked almost healed, some purification magic still remained there. She gently wiped away the sweat that had formed from forcing herself to use magic. Your body seems to be continuously purifying. But before the left hand fully recovers, this power can't transfer to other parts for purification. Letty told him not to worry, I'll definitely cure you before I die. Zalahan was confused. Before you die? Realizing she had slipped up, Letty quickly drank several gulps of water to cover it up. I mean, I'll cure you as soon as possible, just trust me. Zalahan didn't suspect anything and awkwardly asked his doubt. You're not afraid of me? Letty chuckled. Why should I be afraid of you? Then she recalled Zalahan's nickname as the Ghost of War. The war was already lost, but you turned the tide and achieved victory. They should praise you as a national hero, yet they give you such a nickname. It must be a royal conspiracy. Empire's first swordmaster, that's real praise. Besides, the scary one is the person who cursed you, yet people fear you. The cursed victim, isn't that victim blaming? I think the one who cursed you should pay the price. Letty's words were sincere with every syllable, like gentle whispers nurturing Zalahan's withered heart. These were words he had never heard before, feelings he had never experienced. Just then, Letty leaned forward, cupping Zalahan's reddening face in both hands. both comforting and coquettish. I'm not afraid of you, I'm just afraid you won't date me. Please let go of me, he said, turning his blushing face away, leaving Letty to apologize awkwardly. Remembering the feeling left on her fingertips, she kept rubbing them together. His face is so soft and smooth. Zalahan stood up saying, 7 o'clock, see you at dinner time, then ran away like the wind. Thinking she had a terminal illness, she could boldly flirt with even the fearsome Duke monster, so she could confidently extend her grabby hands to tease him. Unexpectedly, Zalahan had agreed to have dinner with her. Letty hummed happily, feeling somewhat proud. Is he weak to physical contact? I just touched his face once and he agreed. His skin felt so wonderfully soft, she remembered contentedly. Just then a miss interrupted her thoughts. It was Stan, the Duke's butler. Have you met his grace? Letty happily gave him a thumbs up. Yes, thanks to you I didn't get lost and found him right away, and we've agreed to have dinner together. Hearing this, Stan was surprised. Since the previous Duchess passed away, no one had dined with the master. The young lady before him was truly a blessing. I leave the Duke in your care, Letty laughed embarrassedly. It's just a meal together. Why entrust him to me? Stan just smiled meaningfully, and soon after, an enormous thick book titled Premium Dating Guy was placed on Zalahan's desk by Stan. Having only learned dining etiquette as a child, he was indeed worried about being mocked by the mage who was 5 years younger than him. But what was this dating guide nonsense? What did it have to do with her? Zalahan's rebellious teenage side emerged. Take it back. But this was Stan's treasure, preserved for 27 years. If not now, then when? Who would have thought that the decisive Duke would surrender to his elderly butler? Seeing Stan start to read it passionately, Zalahan felt a headache coming on. I'm not listening. Then he put on his coat and headed for the door. Stan was puzzled. You're not eating outside, why wear a coat? Zalahan didn't answer, obviously to cover up his ancestral smell. When he opened the door, Letty excitedly stood up to greet him. He just silently sat across from her. It was just a meal together. He hadn't expected her to be so happy. Without a word, Letty picked up her utensils and sat right next to him. I want to modify the contract's contents. Would you like to look? Zalahan was confused. Give it to me. Letty pressed close to him with the contract. To be honest, compared to the purification magic I'm using, the payment seems insufficient. The eternally single Zalahan secretly shifted away, thinking, young people these days are really direct. If it's about money, I can give her whatever amount she wants. The contract had 2 additions. First, Party B must dine with Party A once daily. Second, Party B must agree to Party A's outing invitations twice weekly. Zalahan didn't understand. Outing invitations? Letty was straightforward. Dates, of course. But Zalahan was somewhat incredulous. Were dates all Letty wanted to add? If she later realized her payment wasn't enough and tried to run away, it would be troublesome. So he added another condition. If Party A fails to completely purify Party B's curse, Party A must bear all consequences brought by Party B. Letty hesitantly agreed, all right. Although she had originally planned to help him completely purify the curse, having it written in black and white made her somewhat afraid. She would never know how much impact this additional clause would have in the future. The two quickly signed the contract. Letty hurriedly asked, how about we have a picnic tomorrow? I heard the back garden here is spacious and beautiful. Zalahan, while putting away the contract, told her, I have to go to the royal city tomorrow. When she asked about the day after, he felt there was no need to rush, but Letty was urgent. Because I'm in a hurry to get your love. Zalahan instinctively ignored her love signals, saying, let's eat. Several days later, Letty's spiritual power had fully recovered. To purify the curse completely before leaving, she decided to find Zalahan now. Opening the office door, seeing Zalahan's face that was so handsome it could anger both gods and humans, Letty's eyes nearly went blind. She slowly moved to the desk. This sun named Zalahan will never set. Your face is truly dazzling. Not understanding what she was saying, Zalahan chose to ignore it. It's still cool weather, let's have our picnic during the day. Go back for now, I have lots of work. But Letty sat right on his desk. You don't even have time for curse purification? Hearing this, Zalahan's whole body tensed. Had her spiritual power recovered so quickly? Letty gently lifted his hand and unwrapped the bandages. Direct skin contact might work better. The dazzling light appeared again. Letty's expression looked much more relaxed than the first time. The curse on your hand isn't deep. One purification should be enough. Like last time, after a few days, the curse here will be completely purified. Zalahan looked at his fair hand in disbelief. I spent over 10 years trying to purify the curse, yet it was solved so easily. He asked if Letty's body was alright, to which she shrugged. Last time I wasted a lot of spiritual power, but now I've figured out the technique. She suddenly moved closer to Zalahan. Now that the curse is purified, would you like to go on a picnic with me? Letty hadn't expected the spring morning to be so cool, the breeze making her teeth chatter. but this weather helped with dating. She naturally clung to Zalahan nearby for warmth. Looking at him expectantly, she thought, if someone could take off their coat and let me wear it, I'd be so warm, but he quickly tightened his clothes, saying, I won't. Actually, he was worried about the curse's smell on his clothes. Letty pondered seriously, you're right, Zalahan can't catch a cold. Then she ran to the fountain edge and quickly laid out the picnic blanket. Come over here, there's sunlight, it's warm. Zalahan thought Letty was really energetic. Faced with her enthusiastic advances, he turned into a slippery eel, dodging wherever she touched. This distance was just right. Letty felt somewhat defeated. Had he been hurt in previous relationships, or did he have something against her? Although she hadn't dated much either, when it came to flirting, she had never lost to anyone. Meanwhile, Zalahan was marveling to himself. He never thought he'd live to sit in a flower garden. Truly incredible. Letty opened the food basket, the sumptuous food looking delicious. Stan's instructions echoed in his ears, wishing you both a fulfilling love. Zalahan just wanted to say, get lost, okay? Letty asked what his favorite food was. Learning he had no particular favorites, she was incredulous. Not even having favorite foods, what joy is there in life? I like salmon sandwiches, but I don't like cucumbers' taste. I can eat it, but won't actively choose it. Zalahan caught a faint fragrance from Letty, muttering scent. Letty thought he also disliked cucumber, so she handed him a sandwich, but he was pondering, can the purification stone also purify fragrances? The smell from my curse seems to be gradually diluting. I want to ask if she notices any strange smells, if she's been enduring it all this time. Lost in thought, Zalahan put the sandwich in his mouth. He didn't notice Letty watching him with teary eyes, silently applauding as if watching a classic musical. How can this face be so handsome? She turned and waved her fingers gently. The garden flowers intertwined to form a beautiful wreath floating over, landing perfectly on Zalahan's head. A gentle breeze blew, flower fragrance lingering in the air, while Letty stared at the man before her, transfixed. Wasn't this face truly an angel descended to earth? But Zalahan thought she was teasing him and quickly reached to remove the wreath. Just then, a spring breeze swept past. The wreath blew behind him. Letty hurriedly tried to catch it. Not noticing the fountain there, Zalahan quickly stood to warn her of danger. The next moment, water splashed everywhere. Letty was soaking wet. Zalahan sat in the pool watching over her, sighing helplessly, Miss Mage, please stop scaring me. Her cheeks turned slightly pink, as she felt Zalahan's hand move from her waist to her hair, brushing aside her wet locks. His tone full of concern, why did you jump in? What if you catch a cold? Letty awkwardly avoided his gaze. I have a good constitution, I won't catch cold. However, Zalahan picked her up princess style, making her cry out in surprise. After realizing what happened, she protested, struggling, the date's too short, this doesn't count. But the consequences came too quickly. 38.5 degrees, Letty had a fever. Even so, she joked cheerfully, congratulations on witnessing my first cold ever. Zalahan was utterly speechless. Are you joking with me? I have to go to the royal city today. I've called a priest to come, seeing Letty obediently reply okay. This surprised him somewhat, thinking she would make excuses to keep him there. Was she more sensible than he thought? Letty blinked at him, though I'm sick, it's not serious, and she still came to see me. Her unusual reaction made Zalahan somewhat uneasy. In the carriage, he wondered what had happened at the Blanche mansion to make Letty run away like this. The Blanche family wouldn't just let their daughter stay at another mansion. He had been too distracted before to think about it properly. He needed to investigate. Just then, another carriage passed by. Glimpsing the priest's silver white hair, Zalahan thought it was a priestess. Then he hurriedly covered his reddening face. I smiled, how could this be? Meanwhile, Letty's face was even redder. Who could have imagined the healing priest would look like this? It was simply unfair. The man had silver white hair and golden eyes, fair skin, and a melodious voice. Miss, are you the patient? I'm from the temple. Letty's little heart pounded wildly, thanking the heavens for creating such a being in this world. The priest naturally sat by the bed. I'm called Dasha, a priest of Alterion. Letty shyly gave her name too. Dasha raised his hand to her face, drawing her head closer to him. Then let's begin the treatment. Gentle divine power began flowing. Dasha asked why she was here. Letty instantly became unwilling. Because I want to. What's it to you? Dasha quickly apologized for his rudeness. It's all because of my personality, making me often bullied at the temple too. Because of the strict hierarchy in the temple, low-ranking priests like me are often looked down upon. Letty then noticed the scar on his forehead. She had indeed heard that these house-call treatments were handled by poor, low-ranking priests. Such a beautiful face was scarred, couldn't the temple seniors help heal it? Dasha completed the treatment, leaving Letty feeling refreshed. Although knowing he was paid for treatment, she still wanted to express gratitude, so she asked Dasha to come closer, then placed her hand on his forehead, brilliant light shining again. Letty noticed he seemed very peaceful, and the spiritual power consumed in treating him was more than she had expected. After treatment, Dasha opened his eyes and looked at Letty in disbelief. He touched his smooth forehead in amazement. Incredible. Are you a healing mage? He asked. After getting an affirmative answer, he asked if she would be his healing mage. He would pay her handsomely. Letty was confused. Wasn't the low-ranking priest supposed to be poor? Besides, she had to prioritize Zalahan's purification. What if her little cutie got angry? So she firmly declined, but Dasha asked if she might be available in the future. Learning she might have free time later, he took it as agreement. To show gratitude, I'll also provide you with free treatment forever. If you help me with healing, I'll definitely pay you each time. Beautiful men had always been Letty's weakness, and with such tempting conditions and looks, she had no reason to refuse. So she immediately agreed. Dasha seized the chance to suggest becoming good friends. Seeing Letty hesitate, he slowly moved closer. Miss Letty, I really like. Letty had never had such a friend before, and he was so handsome. Experiencing friendship before leaving didn't seem bad, so she gladly agreed. Soon after, at the Altayan temple, the self-proclaimed low-ranking priest Dasha entered, and other priests lined up to greet him. Welcome back, High Priest Mihai Dasha Wilian, Your Grace. When Zala Khan returned from the imperial palace, he was having an intense internal struggle, finally deciding not to visit the magician. But the inexplicable concern in his heart made him very conflicted. Unexpectedly, Letty opened the door for him proactively, saying, You're back. Zala Khan was somewhat surprised. This seemed to be the first time someone had come out to welcome him. If Stan knew his thoughts, he would probably be heartbroken. After all, he was a master who waited respectfully at the door every day. Zala Khan stiffly squeezed into the room and asked how her cold was. Much better, the cleric said. After another treatment in 2 days, I'll be completely cured. As she spoke, she grabbed Zala Khan's hand and put it on her forehead. Feel it? Isn't it much better? Zala Khan quickly withdrew his hand, not understanding why she was so uninhibited. Then told her she didn't need to come welcome him in the future, since it wasn't in the contract. Letty seemed not to notice the distance in his tone, bouncing along after him. But I miss you, didn't you miss me today? Learning that he hadn't at all, Letty wasn't discouraged. Instead, she continued following because Zala Khan's reaction was strange, so she couldn't help wanting to tease him. Zala Khan noticed she was following breathlessly, so he secretly slowed his pace. With a chance to catch her breath, Letty asked what he planned to do tomorrow, learning he would be handling documents at home. She excitedly invited him to see a show together. She had booked VIP seats, and tomorrow would be the last performance. However, Zala Khan repeatedly refused. Where could he go with this cursed body? Everyone would avoid him, and even look at him with disgust. Although he didn't know why Letty took the curse so lightly, he still felt he needed to explain properly to her. Seeing her pitifully asking why, Zala Khan's face turned cold. Are you really not afraid of me? My title as War Ghost isn't groundless. Just one wave of my hand and dozens or hundreds of people would lose their lives. Getting close to me is like getting close to death. Letty was struck by his suddenly dangerous aura. Indeed, feeling afraid, but not enough to run away. She forcefully pat Zala Khan's shoulder. Facing her stinging palm, angrily questioned, I attacked the famous Duke Candel. What are you going to do about it? And I always peek at you, grab your hand without permission, and call you by name directly. So are you going to kill me? She got increasingly angry. Grabbing his collar tightly, what are you hesitating for? What I want to hear isn't whether you can go, but whether you yourself want to see the show. Don't mind what others think, just consider yourself. Give me an answer before tomorrow morning. After saying this, she turned and left, fleeing with a final line, if you refuse, I'll go with another man. Actually, Letty panicked, feeling she had made trouble, not knowing if she would still see tomorrow's sun. Naturally, she wouldn't notice Zala Khan's reddened ears at this moment. Fortunately, the date request succeeded the next day. Letty accepted Zala Khan's attentive care with a radiant face. She even schemed to stumble when getting out of the carriage, pretending to accidentally be embraced. While secretly rejoicing at her successful plot, she heard Zala Khan tell her not to constantly try to find ways to hold his hand. Can't you just condescend to let me hold it once? The other quickly withdrew his hand and refused. at this moment facing the noisy crowd. Noticing Zayla Khan's shrinking back, Letty grabbed his hand firmly. Let's just go in directly. Anyway, there's only us two at the seats, don't worry. The performance ended amid cheers. Letty still seemed enthralled. That was really so interesting. The main actor was so handsome. Zayla Khan thought she liked prince-like looks, but actually she just liked looking at handsome men. Then Letty told him to wait in the carriage first while she went to use the restroom. Just as she was contemplating whether to get something to eat before heading back, a voice called out to her. She turned to look. It was her former fiancé Marquis Segra. Knowing it couldn't be anything good, Letty immediately began gathering power. Didn't I say I never wanted to see you again? Are you deaf? Segra calmly snapped his fingers. Have some self-awareness, you're no longer the young lady of House Blanche. Several hands suddenly controlled Letty from behind. Segra had always wanted to see her again, because he really couldn't forget that day's humiliation. He walked up and caressed Letty's cheek. Since you're a commoner now, can I make you my concubine? You're so beautiful, I'll treat you well. Suddenly a sword aura grazed past Segra's wrist. He looked at Letty in terror. The several people behind instantly lost their heads. Zayla Khan appeared beside Letty. I waited for you for a long time, you didn't come back, so I came to find you. If I only harm those who don't know their place, would you still be disappointed in me? Coming to his senses, Segra shouted. How dare you? Do you know who I am? Zayla Khan had never seen someone dare speak to him this way. His icy gaze made the man feel as if he'd walked through death's door. Letty feared he would kill Segra. Quickly turned to stop him. Zayla Khan seemed unconcerned. I am Kandel, but Letty didn't think being Kandel meant he could kill a marquis without consequences. Just as Zayla Khan was considering whether to tell her the emperor had given him authority to execute on the spot, Letty pulled his hand and ran outside. After getting in the carriage, Zayla Khan silently watched her, gasping for breath. Somewhat dejectedly turning his face away, after what just happened, he had prepared for the worst. Yet saw Letty smile and give him a thumbs up. You're so cool, even cooler than the male lead in the show. This sudden praise left him bewildered. He hurriedly turned away again and gave a brief in response. Actually, although Letty didn't much like people who resorted to violence readily, to her that was just self-defense, so it wouldn't affect her feelings for Zayla Khan. However, the next day, when Dao Xia came to treat Letty, he found her cold had returned due to yesterday's events. After finishing the treatment, Letty asked Dao Xia, can divine power cure terminal illnesses? Neither healing magic nor divine power can cure terminal illnesses. If they could be cured, they wouldn't be called terminal, but just difficult to treat illnesses. Letty was clearly disappointed after hearing this, so she will still die? But then heard Dao Xia add, however, if treated by someone with divine power at the level of His Holiness the Pope, recovery might be possible. But he didn't say he himself was the Pope designate. Letty instantly deflated. How could she meet the Pope? Dao Xia stared at her thoughtfully. Letty's magical circuits were all tangled together. This was a rare condition caused by excess magic power. Though not fatal, she would be tormented by illness her whole life. However, for him, curing her wouldn't be difficult. So Dao Xia indicated if she didn't mind, he could come regularly to treat her. Letty naturally agreed. Then excuse me, Dao Xia suddenly held her tightly. Then pressed her head against his forehead. Glowing magic power began to flow. Only after the light faded did they gradually separate. Today's treatment is done, I'll need to come several more times. Letty was already dazed by his flirting, stammering out a thank you. Yet heard Dao Xia ask, if you really want to thank me, can you help me with something? Letty looked at Dao Xia's blood-covered arm, face pale. How did you get injured so badly? She hurriedly began healing, watching the wound visibly heal. Dao Xia smiled with satisfaction. Indeed, it wasn't a misconception, not in vain that he deliberately made wounds to test her power. But Letty trembled and collapsed. How strange, why do I feel completely drained after healing you? She naturally didn't know that because he was the next pope, healing him would necessarily consume vast amounts of magic power. Dao Xia guiltily thanked her, placing a ruby on her body, saying it was payment for the treatment. Because his family had discovered a mine. Letty was overjoyed to receive such a gem as payment for one treatment. She willingly submitted to money. So she quickly bowed obsequiously. I'm willing to serve you for life, as long as you don't find other magicians. Dao Xia was amused by her. Of course, don't think about escaping. Early the next morning, Letty learned from Stan that Zayla Khan had returned very late yesterday and was still sleeping. Originally somewhat unhappy, But heard Stan suggest she wake the master herself. She didn't know the kindly Stan was calculating that if they hit it off, marriage would be best. Following his guidance, Letty came to the door. After entering, found Zayla Khan indeed still sleeping. Letty went forward to greet him. Zayla Khan got up groggily. Magician, he struggled to open his eyes somewhat sleepily. Why are you here? Unexpectedly, Letty sat right on the bed. I think purification in the bedroom might be good too. Come on quickly. Zayla Khan moved away somewhat resistantly, asking what she meant. Letty explained that from today they would purify his upper body, skin contact would work better. Then she straddled forward, pointing at Zayla Khan's chest, telling him to take off his clothes. Accidentally blurting out, or I'll help you undress, predictably rejected by him. Letty watched with satisfaction as he awkwardly took off his shirt. Seeing him shyly ask, do the bandages need to come off too? Letty told him it was necessary, had to touch skin for it to work. Zayla Khan slowly unwound the bandages, feeling Letty's surprised gaze. He turned his head, struggling to contain his embarrassment. But Letty was startled. The curse was severe, she needed to check first. Placing her hand on Zayla Khan's chest to gently probe. Your curse is too powerful, probably can't finish in one go, but I'll do my best. The treatment began, the air quiet except for their breathing, feeling the dazzling healing light. But Zayla Khan only felt it was too close, his mind in chaos. He shyly turned his head away. While Letty, because she had used too much magic power, collapsed onto his chest with a thud. She explained with a troubled expression, actually I treated the cleric yesterday, so I don't have much magic power left. I'll adjust well in the future, won't delay your purification, so can I occasionally treat him? After all, we're friends now. Zayla Khan didn't mind these things, he was more concerned that Letty did this with the cleric too. But thinking the cleric was female, he didn't mind anymore. He told Letty to do as she wished. Zayla Khan, when will you date me? After saying this, Letty fainted. Afterwards, Zayla Khan couldn't be found anywhere. He seemed to always be avoiding her. Letty couldn't help wondering if she had been too rash. She shared these worries with Dao Xia. She thought he was quite good at relationship advice. Must have dated many girls. Dao Xia lifted a lock of her hair. Why don't you make him jealous? If he sees you with another man, he'll surely understand his own heart. But no man is with me. She had never dated, didn't even have male friends because of the engagement. Dao Xia's forehead pressed against Letty's. I'm a man too. Then began the treatment. This domineering and direct action startled Letty. She pondered Dao Xia's suggestion. Operation Jealousy seemed not bad. In her mind, she even imagined Zayla Khan going crazy for her. Just thinking about it made her a bit excited. But she couldn't do this to Zayla Khan, it would make him unhappy. Letty declined Dao Xia's kind offer. She would use her own methods to seduce her little kitten. Late at night, Zayla Khan finally returned quietly under moonlight. Then was startled by Letty, who was waiting at the door. Why aren't you asleep? He had calculated Letty would be asleep at this hour before returning. But Letty was specifically here to ambush him. She strode toward him, thinking today she must get this done. Party B must accept Party A's date invitations at least twice a week. You haven't forgotten, right? Zayla Khan retreated silently, feeling his stomach churning. No, perhaps it was his heart. Just facing the magician made his feelings strange, that's why he kept avoiding her. Zayla Khan turned away, his face asking, Then can we take a walk in the backyard tomorrow? His evasive attitude pained Letty, seeming like only she was invested in this relationship. Zayla Khan just needed her power. Recalling her past experiences during this time before, she didn't want to be submissive anymore. Letty forced out a smile. You seem very busy, we don't need to eat together and go out like completing tasks. Since Duke is so busy, I was thoughtless to disturb you. Zayla Khan heard Letty address him this way for the first time. Such unfamiliarity made him uneasy. Only hearing Letty continue, since you're so busy, I'll eat and shop with my cleric friend, so forget about breaking the contract, you focus on work. After saying this, Letty clenched her hands, hoping Zayla Khan would say something. But he hesitated and finally said nothing. In the end, she was delusional. Letty turned and ran away without looking back, leaving Zayla Khan standing there, not understanding why this pain felt different. After returning, Letty pulled out her wish list. This notebook was given by her father, while she had given Leon a jeweled sword. Thinking back to when Leon kept showing off how good the West was after returning from travel. Thinking she had never traveled in her life, Letty choked up. She just wanted to do everything she wanted before dying. Was that too much? The reason she wanted to date was just to have a beautiful memory. Was this a burden to Zayla Khan? But when they were together, she hadn't felt his disgust. His eyes looking at her clearly showed tenderness. Seemed she needed to try harder. The next day, as Dao Xia was changing clothes, Joshua didn't understand why he always wore low-ranking cleric clothes lately. Dao Xia dismissed it. Didn't everyone in the temple wear them? Learning he was going to see that healing magician again. Joshua reminded him, I heard she lives in Duke Candel's mansion. It would be troublesome if your identity is exposed. Can't you bring her to the temple? No one would refuse the position of next pope's attendant. But Dao Xia thought it wasn't certain. After all, she wasn't ordinary. Without heeding what else Joshua said, Dao Xia turned saying goodbye and left. Actually, he had already investigated Letty. Daughter of Duke Blanche, Marquis Segra's missing fiancé, possessing extraordinary healing ability and excess magic power. Spending every day beside Duke Candel purifying curses. The Duke was very generous to her, while Letty liked the Duke. Dao Xia knew making her his exclusive healing magician would be somewhat difficult. He wanted to seduce her to his side before their relationship deepened. After all, he really liked Letty, so he needed to think about how to entice her. As soon as the carriage stopped, Letty rushed in asking if he had time today. Then plopped down inside, inviting him to go eat, drink and play. So the Operation Jealousy began. Dao Xia couldn't quite follow Letty's train of thought. But he quickly understood, smiling slyly, of course, my lady. He originally just wanted to use this as an excuse to date and seduce Letty. But somehow it developed into playing with fire. Operation Jealousy's first stop was the dessert shop. After eating and drinking their fill, Letty remembered Dao Xia said his family had mines. If so, why do you still make house calls to treat others? Dao Xia's eyes shifted as he made up lies. Usually don't go out much, this time is. He pretended to look pitiful, lowering his head. Someone forced me out. The clerics originally forced low-ranking clerics to make house calls. Hearing this, Letty couldn't help feeling sympathetic. Then she raised her thumb, promising Dao Xia, don't worry, if seniors bully you again I'll help you get revenge. Dao Xia found her really interesting, having such powerful magic power yet not knowing how amazing she was. He thought his interest in Letty wouldn't last long, but now seemed more interested. So he teased, asking how she'd get revenge. Letty raised her little fists spiritedly, burn his clothes in public, or hang him in a tree. Dao Xia hadn't expected she could even use elemental magic. But also knew she'd gain nothing good by opposing the temple, thinking she was just talking. While Letty suddenly stared at a brooch in the window display, lost in thought. Feeling it would really suit Zayla Khan. Dao Xia's jumping up startled her. I'm looking at jewelry, saw one that suits you, I'll ask the price. Though unnecessary, Dao Xia still smiled and agreed. Watching Letty run off in a flash. Soon after, he was bumped in the shoulder. Seeing his low-ranking cleric clothes, the other person started cursing. Aren't you going to apologize to your senior? Do you know who I am? I'm a talent who became a regular cleric in less than 5 years. Dao Xia couldn't be bothered, telling him to leave quickly if he didn't want regrets, but this arrogant attitude angered the other person. He grabbed his collar, about to teach him a lesson. Dao Xia coldly watched him, considering whether to just kill him. But spectators had already gathered around. He didn't want his real identity known yet, so had to let him off for now. Dao Xia bowed, respectfully apologizing. The man got cocky, wanting to show off more. Yet heard a whoosh as flames suddenly arose, instantly spreading all over his body. His eye-catching bare underwear drew everyone's attention. Before Dao Xia could react, he was called out by a clear voice. Letty grabbed his wrist and ran, until running into a small alley. The sweaty girl smiled brightly. Didn't I say I'd help you get revenge? If you're troubled, I'll go turn myself in, don't worry. Dao Xia held himself back. Finally, unable to contain it anymore, burst out laughing. Letty felt his laugh was somewhat perverted. While he suddenly buried his head in her shoulder. Sweetie, what should I do? You're really too interesting enough to make one want to possess you. When recalling Letty's disappointment in him then. At this moment, Zayla Khan finally panicked. Master, if you keep ignoring this, something big will happen. You should pay some attention to the young lady. Even just eating together would be good. After all, who knows how their relationship might develop. Stan's words pierced him like a needle. Even if they become lovers, it has nothing to do with me. Though saying this, just thinking of their intimate actions made Zayla Khan hurt too much to breathe. He kept comforting himself. The magician is just someone who purifies my curse. Her earlier insistence on dating me must have been a whim. He understood the logic, but just couldn't control his pounding heart. His stomach was churning again. Who would like a monster like him? The magician must just be consoling him out of sympathy. He couldn't be controlled by emotions. But the next day, he couldn't help seeking out Letty, inviting her to eat together. Letty pretended to be reserved on the surface. So you've finished your work? While internally rejoicing, had Operation Jealousy worked? Dao Xia really was a love expert. Thinking of this, she couldn't help drooling over Zayla Khan's divine face again. How could he be so handsome? He could conquer the universe with his face. Just as she was lost in thought, Zayla Khan suddenly looked at her asking how she'd been lately, startling her. Quickly hiding her blatant gaze, very well, been playing with friends, she searched through vegetables on her plate. No cucumber, that's good. Then peeked at Zayla Khan, would he be jealous? I went out with a man after all. However, he just coldly replied, is that so? Letty hurriedly explained, Dao Xia is coming this afternoon, he'll stay in the room briefly then leave, you don't need to mind him. Who knew though Zayla Khan minded terribly, he stubbornly insisted he didn't care. Hearing this, Letty felt somewhat defeated. Aren't you jealous? Zayla Khan's face turned bright red, looking at her pitifully. He was actually dying of jealousy. Yet still pathetically managed to make Letty leave in anger. But still stubbornly refused to admit it. Making the girl who had just felt hope have her heart turn cold again, the food in her hand lost its taste. All right. I'm not hungry, I'll go first. See you when we purify. When Dao Xia entered, he saw the dejected Letty, hearing things weren't going well. He had expected this move naturally wouldn't work on Duke Candel. How could such a cold-blooded person get jealous? Now I just need to seduce her well, make her my person. Dao Xia sat beside Letty, patting her shoulder to comfort her. Letty also felt he had come all this way. She kept talking about herself, felt somewhat sorry. Why are you wearing glasses today? Like a librarian, suits you well. Dao Xia explained, today just felt I should wear glasses. My intuition is very accurate, this wasn't false. As the next pope, Dao Xia had prophetic abilities. But he used such important abilities to predict today's fortune, really a bit of a waste, he smiled asking Letty. How is it, do you like it? Like it, he more than liked it, even her depressed heart was purified by his beauty. Dao Xia grabbed Letty's slender waist. Forehead against her forehead, let's start healing, at this moment never mind Letty's red cheeks, who wouldn't be dazed by this attack. While Zayla Khan was still sighing in his room. Facing Stan's burning gaze, also complaining his suggestion wasn't useful. Stan didn't understand, how could you treat the young lady this way? Actually arranging someone else's food for the first time. He felt the master must have sensed his feelings wavering. Since being cursed, he rarely contacted people. So maybe it was hard to notice his own feelings. For his happiness, Stan suggested Zayla Khan face his true heart. Hearing the cleric had arrived at the mansion, go see for yourself. Don't consider anything else, just focus on your heart. My heart jealousy is something only people with hearts do. And since being cursed by the witch, my heart has never held anyone else. Though thinking this, Zayla Khan still walked toward Letty's room. Through the door crack, he saw their intimate actions. At that moment he completely overturned his earlier thoughts. Rushing and grabbing Dao Xia's wrist. Warning him in an extremely restrained tone to stay away from Letty. Dao Xia seemed unsurprised, calmly greeting Duke. Fortunately he wore glasses today, would be troublesome if his identity was discovered. While Letty, facing two divine beauties together for the first time, was scared by this sudden situation. She anxiously explained to Zayla Khan, we're just doing healing between friends. Dao Xia subtly stepped forward, embracing her shoulder. Sweetie, did he scare you? It's alright. Seeing that offensive hand and intimate address, Zayla Khan grew furious. Just friends? Where do you two look like friends? Especially Dao Xia, at this moment still provocatively stroking Letty's hair, comforting her. Zayla Khan strongly suppressed his urge to kill, letting the cleric leave first. Dao Xia didn't linger. Just the earlier situation made him wonder, could the Duke also like Sweetie? Things were getting more and more interesting, he was even less likely to give up now. Left alone in the room, the two were extremely quiet. Letty stammered, speaking first, didn't you say you weren't jealous? Zayla Khan also realized he was too emotional earlier. Did he really get jealous? Just thinking of Letty being so gentle with others made him anxious, he didn't want her to hate him. Also didn't want to hurt her if only she were his. Though he kept denying, ignoring his feelings, but getting no answer, Letty prepared to add fuel to the fire. I'm going drinking with Dao Xia. After a brief silence, Zayla Khan finally gathered his courage. Don't go. I like you, Letty. This is the first time I've realized my heart can beat so fast. When you're beside me, I can't help looking at you. When you're not here, I keep thinking of you. Thinking of you with other men, I can't control wanting to cut off that person's hands. Letty was stunned listening to Zayla Khan's sudden confession, not knowing how to respond. Only saw his eyes reddened, gaze showing restraint. If this is jealousy, then yes, I'm really jealous. He raised his hand wanting to touch Letty's cheek, yet painfully clenched his fist because he was a cursed monster, even afraid of touching and hurting her. But even so, he didn't want to let go. This feeling was strange, so all along he had been confused. Letty, about the dating proposal, does it still count? Letty hadn't expected happiness would come so suddenly. Happily telling him, of course, then threw herself into Zayla Khan's embrace. Zayla Khan stiffly hugged Letty back hesitantly, his little heart excited as if about to jump out. Watching her happily say, "Please take good care of me from now on." Zayla Khan seemed not to have come to his senses. Yes, of course. This was his first experience giving and receiving love, also couldn't believe such a happy moment would come to him. Just Zayla Khan didn't know, while he was planning their future, imagining Letty would live here forever, she was calculating she would passionately date for 3 months then leave. Soon after, Zayla Khan looked at the list in his hand. Go see shows, read together in the library, swim together, go to hot springs, and other things. He asked Letty what this was, learning it was his wish list, and she hoped to complete at least 2 things. Zayla Khan was somewhat hesitant. Because of the curse, his body couldn't do many things. Flipping through the notebook, he found many other writings. Letty's hand quickly stopped him. That was an article about other things. Seemingly calm Letty was actually panicking internally. Oh no. It would be troublesome if he saw my end-of-life wish list. I don't want him to know the person dating him is about to die. Continuing to read, Zayla Khan felt struck by lightning, seeing tour this city completed. He immediately imagined scenes of Letty happily shopping with that cleric. His whole being turned sour. Seems you had a great time last time. The man who just confirmed their relationship was already jealous. No choice, who told him to only now see his own heart. Looking at Letty's black and white writing stating city tour completed. Letty hurriedly explained, "No, this is just my list of things I want to do, not things I must do with a lover." Yet saw Zayla Khan huffily state then there was no need to do them together. Letty saw his behavior, corner of her mouth twitching. Finally unable to control herself, burst out laughing. She moved close to Zayla Khan. "Sorry, you're too cute when you're jealous." Then gazed at him lovingly. "But I want to do these with my lover, don't you like that?" How could the simple Zayla Khan handle such a temptress, red-faced saying he had already arranged the carriage, earning Letty suddenly hugging his neck exclaiming, "Ah, Zayla Khan, you're really too good." Soon after, they arrived at the Empire's boutique. Letty was still savoring Zayla Khan's cuteness. He actually brought her shopping for clothes, even the luxurious attire she couldn't afford before. Letty changed into an elegant light cyan gown, adorned with matching luxury gems, asking Zayla Khan how it looked. Yet saw his pupils constrict, momentarily speechless. Seeing the atmosphere turn awkward, Letty had to ask again, which looks better, this one or the beige one? This time Zayla Khan didn't stay silent, grandly declaring, "No need to choose just one, if you like them buy them all, including the accessories you saw." These moving words made the man before her no longer just a duke, but a handsome walking ATM. The return carriage was packed full of spoils. Letty suddenly questioned Zayla Khan, "Why didn't you answer me earlier?" Seeing him not understand, Letty forcefully poked him, "The gown. Didn't I ask if it looked good?" Saying this, she suddenly realized, Zayla Khan's abdomen was so firm. Only saw him quickly turn his head, red-faced saying, "Looked good, actually it was too beautiful." He forgot how to respond. But Letty wouldn't have it, answering too late, "This is an insult to me." Then she pouted, poking Zayla Khan again, "If it's beautiful you should answer right away." Zayla Khan shrank from her poking, embarrassedly asking her to stop. Only saw Zayla Khan grab Letty's wrist, moving close, seriously telling her, "Very beautiful really." Now it was Letty's turn to blush. The two were inches apart, seemingly able to feel each other's breath. Letty's gaze grew misty. "Really? Then kiss me." Saying this, she raised her hands to embrace Zayla Khan's neck. The sweet scent of love permeated the air, now only the sound of thumping hearts remained. Just as their lips were about to touch, "Sir, we've arrived, where should we put these things?" The interrupted pair stared at each other. Zayla Khan's face was even redder, about to bleed. Coming to his senses, he quickly darted out of the carriage, running back to the mansion in a flash, leaving a confused Letty frozen in place. A few days later, Letty was feeling down. Because since that day when they kissed and Zalahan ran away, there had been no progress between them. Things were exactly the same as before, with Zalahan maintaining his usual calm expression, though being slightly more attentive. Letty didn't have much time, so she didn't want to just sit and wait. So putting on her most endearing look, she said, "I want Zalahan to feed me. Don't you want to show affection to your lover today?" Zalahan felt embarrassed. "Your hands work perfectly fine, why do you need to be fed?" But if that's what Letty wanted, he would comply. He picked up a piece of vegetable with his fork. "Here, please eat." Letty happily leaned forward and ate it in one bite. Then she moved her seat right next to Zalahan. Hugging his neck tightly, "Zalahan, you're so wonderful, you're the best." She contentedly pressed against him, enjoying the pleasure of intimate contact. But she failed to notice Zalahan's reddened face and strained expression. He suddenly stood up, saying he had some documents to handle and needed to leave. Ignoring Letty's reluctant protests, he said goodbye and fled the scene. This behavior left Stan, who was watching from the side, dumbfounded. Young master is serious about this, but he's really not getting it. The impact on Letty was even greater. Could it be that Zalahan wanted a platonic relationship? Thinking of this, she couldn't help but bang her head on the table. Was he like a cake in a photograph, look but don't touch? No, she had to test this herself. A few days later, Letty actively sought out Zalahan for purification, because she didn't have much time left. So she needed to confirm quickly. If Zalahan truly disliked physical contact, she would have to control her desire for affection. But a platonic love? What kind of torture was that? Letty said they would still be purifying the upper body today. Though Zalahan was still somewhat embarrassed. He promptly removed his shirt. He sat on the sofa, indicating he was ready. Letty didn't say much and directly began the purification. At this moment, the red-faced Zalahan was actually thinking about the science behind purification. Letty collapsed into Zalahan's arms, either from genuine exhaustion or pretense. Either way, she then brightly told him she felt dizzy and needed a hug. This posture, this distance, plus these suggestive words, even with Zalahan's strong self-control, it was a bit too much. His fair face turned bright red. "My endurance has its limits." He pried Letty's hands away and turned aside uncomfortably. "So it's best to keep our distance because you're too stimulating for me. I don't know how much longer I can hold back." However, Letty raised her hand and stroked Zalahan's arm. "You don't need to hold back, you can do anything you want to do." With these words, Zalahan's thread of reason snapped. After a whirlwind moment, he pinned Letty down on the sofa, his voice filled with difficult restraint. "You said, I can do anything I want to do. Are you sure you won't regret it? Can I really do that?" At this point, seeing this development, Letty became a bit scared. She had only wanted a romantic kiss. But the current situation made her feel like she was about to be devoured. From the dangerous aura emanating from Zalahan's light blue eyes, she was certain not even her bones would remain. Letty fearfully called out to Zalahan. The interrupted man's eyes were already tinged with red. Seeing Letty trembling and apologizing beneath him, his rationality gradually returned from its wild state. Zalahan helped up the somewhat weak Letty. "So, what do you want to do now?" What could Letty do? She didn't dare do anything anymore. Zalahan softly comforted her. "All right, don't provoke me like this again, remember? It's very dangerous." Letty immediately made a solemn promise. "Yes, I'll remember." Seeing her like this, Zalahan also felt sorry for scaring her and told her to return to her room early. As he put on his shirt, he sighed. Now Letty probably wouldn't initiate intimate contact so easily, even though he really wanted to continue. For their date, Letty wanted to go to a bar in the city center with Zalahan. But he regretfully declined. "Having drinks with you at a bar is still difficult for me, I'm sorry, Letty." Zalahan looked at her sadly. He was afraid of people treating him like a monster and afraid of this curse. He also knew that as the lover of the monster duke, she would surely sacrifice many meaningful things, but he still didn't want to let her go. Seemingly sensing Zalahan's unease, Letty smiled and told him not to apologize. Lovers should understand each other, and the location didn't matter as long as they could be together. Hearing her words, Zalahan was indeed comforted, his handsome face once again breaking into a smile. Letty pushed him out the door while urging, "You need to go to the palace, right? Hurry up, you'll be late." "See you tonight." Zalahan promised he would return quickly. Looking back at his beloved Letty, he wanted to finish work and return home right away. Then have a romantic dinner together. Chat while drinking, he wanted to know what she did when he wasn't home. Wanted to know if she had adapted and gotten used to living here, also wanted to ask what kind of wine she liked, what food she preferred. These were all things he wanted to do, but due to conflicts with other countries, the meeting dragged on for a long time, with everyone still arguing back and forth. "Your Majesty, when can we end this meaningless debate?" Zalahan's voice suddenly appeared, making everyone fall silent. Duke Blanche was the first to object, slamming the table and loudly questioning, "How dare you say such foolish things to the Emperor?" Zalahan stared at him with an ashen face. "This person dares to be so rude to me, I should teach him a lesson. But he seems to be Letty's father, forget it, I'll let him off." Duke Blanche felt chills down his spine, of course not knowing he had just walked the edge of hell. Sweat dripped down the Emperor's face as he looked at the somewhat anxious Zalahan. "As Duke Candel says, we can't reach a conclusion yet, so today's meeting is adjourned." As soon as the words fell, Zalahan rushed out of the meeting room like the wind, leaving behind the many ministers who could finally breathe easy. Duke Blanche was very dissatisfied. TCH, that arrogant young man. Duke Ellington leaned over from beside him. "You're lucky, because he seemed to be in a hurry. Don't you know how fierce Duke Candel is? Why would you yell at him like that?" Duke Blanche only said he didn't like seeing that arrogant young man's actions. But Duke Ellington sneered, "If you want to protect your pathetic family, you'd better be more careful." Hit where it hurt, Duke Blanche's face instantly turned red with humiliation. The humiliated Duke Blanche ran out of the meeting room, feeling it was all Letty's fault. With no one managing the assets, the money had disappeared. His wife often complained that he drove their daughter away, leading to their current predicament. Thinking of Letty, who had run away from home. If she came back begging for forgiveness on her knees, he would consider accepting her. After all, where else could she find such a good father as him? Meanwhile, at Duke Candel's mansion, Letty was anxiously waiting. "Where's Zalahan? Has he returned?" Stan told her not to worry, the young master is changing clothes. Hearing this, she finally relaxed. Letty said, "I ran until I was almost dead tired." "Did you run?" A man's voice suddenly sounded from behind. Letty was nearly scared out of her wits. "When did you get here?" Zalahan seemed to be in a good mood, saying, "Just now." He raised his hand to stroke Letty's beautiful hair, telling her there was no need to rush. A blush slowly crept up his face, and after he turned to walk away. Letty thought his reaction clearly showed he had lots of dating experience, and couldn't help wondering how many times he had dated before. Even as they sat on the sofa, she was still pondering, with Zalahan's handsome face and strong physique, would she be the first to possess him? Meanwhile, Zalahan secretly watched her rich array of expressions changing, also wondering what was going through her little mind. Fortunately, Stan's fancy cocktail performance attracted both their attention. Zalahan didn't even know his butler could do this. Stan looked proud. "As a butler, I must be capable of everything. Wishing you a pleasant evening," after which he tactfully withdrew from the room. Seeing how happy Letty looked, Zalahan felt this was good enough. Though watching her drink large gulps, he inwardly wondered if she was drinking too fast. Of course, he didn't know that before Letty ran away from home, she often drowned her sorrows in alcohol. But Zalahan indulgently let her be. The two happily chatted while drinking. The sweet atmosphere began to slowly escalate. Letty suddenly brought up Doha, somewhat guiltily stating, "We're just friends. In a way, he's helping us too." Then she tentatively asked, "Can I continue the treatment? As far as I know, he's the best healer. But if you don't allow it." Zalahan was a bit lost for words. Letty asked him very sincerely, and it was for his health after all, he didn't want to be disliked. So he generously told her to do whatever she wanted. Hearing this, Letty was overjoyed and took the opportunity to snuggle against Zalahan. Suddenly she felt hot all over. She reached to unbutton her clothes but couldn't manage it. After struggling for a while with no success, she grabbed Zalahan's hand and placed it on her chest, ignoring his blushing face. With misty eyes she pleaded, "Please help me take off this dress." As the distance grew shorter and shorter, his heart was about to jump out of his throat. The man hurriedly withdrew his hand, incredulously asking if Letty was drunk. But she slapped his solid chest. directly pushing him down onto the sofa. Then pressed herself on top of him, looking down. "Shall we finish what we didn't complete last time?" The seductive voice made Zalahan's face burn red. He kept telling himself to resist. Letty was drunk. Feeling Letty's gentle caressing hands, he felt his rationality slipping away. He could only try to persuade her kindly. "Letty, please get up." She gave a cunning smile. "Then you have to promise me one request." "What request?" The fantasies in Zalahan's mind were about to spill over. Hearing Letty say she wanted a kiss, he repeatedly chanted to himself, "Letty is drunk, drunk, drunk. Just a kiss, just one kiss." His large hand caressed Letty's delicate face. He slowly moved closer. "Then you must keep your promise." Letty expectantly closed her eyes, the warm breath seemingly just inches away. However, in the end it only landed on her cheek, though this was already a breakthrough for Zalahan. He asked with a red face, "Is that enough?" Letty was exasperated. "Kissing on the cheek? We're not playing house here." She moved forward and cupped Zalahan's handsome face, giving him a passionate kiss despite his exclamation. Time seemed to freeze in that moment, until Letty finally pulled away satisfied. She smugly looked at the man whose face was completely red from the kiss. This is what a kiss should be. But Zalahan could no longer control himself now. He suddenly sat up and pushed Letty down onto the sofa in return. You should have known when to stop, but faced with his forceful counterattack, Letty's eyes slowly closed. And then she even started snoring. The fired-up man was dumbfounded. He could only sit up awkwardly. What was all this about? Frustrating. Early the next morning, Letty came over full of energy. However, she was greeted by an exhausted-looking Zalahan. Seeing her smile innocently and ask when she fell asleep, Zalahan was utterly speechless. After keeping him up all night, she had completely forgotten everything. Actually, he wouldn't have guessed that Letty was just pretending to forget because she felt embarrassed. "My alcohol tolerance is really good, but maybe because it was cocktails I got really drunk this time, sweetie." Zalahan didn't want to hear any of this. He only knew his first kiss had been stolen and the other person had forgotten. He warned her ominously, "From now on you're not allowed to drink with anyone else." Letty was startled by him. "Why? Everyone says my drinking behavior is quite decent." The man's face grew darker. "Everyone? How interesting." He wondered who she had been drinking with. Could it be ex-boyfriends? Letty felt equally wronged. He clearly had many lovers too. Stan suddenly knocked and entered. "Miss, the priest is here." Letty's scalp immediately went numb. Why did he have to come at this time? She secretly glanced at Zalahan, only to see the air pressure around him distorting as he clenched his fists. "Take him to the reception room." "Oh well, I don't care anymore." She went to see Doha, who was waiting leisurely. His smile was the same as always. "Sweetie, it's been a while." Letty apologized for not being able to stop him from being driven out last time, but Doha didn't mind. He even patted her head comfortingly. "You haven't done anything to wrong me. If you feel sorry, then come visit me next time. It's too stressful here." I didn't expect the Duke to be quite cute, actually monitoring me. Letty hoped they could change positions during future treatments. "I have a lover now, so this kind of contact doesn't feel quite right." Hearing Letty say this directly, Doha was quite unhappy. But he could only smile and agree, that way the efficiency will be lower. "But you should care about me too. Are you going to abandon friends for love?" The gentle light spread out as the treatment began. Letty apologized again, explaining she didn't mean it that way. "Why don't we go to the library?" "Right now, surely that place isn't off limits either?" Letty thought going to the library between friends should be fine. So she quickly nodded. Perfect timing since Zalahan seems busy. "Let's go." Hearing this, Doha's face lit up with joy. Once they left the mansion, they could avoid the servants' surveillance. If the Duke cared about his reputation, he presumably wouldn't follow. But the next moment proved him wrong. "Then I'll come too." They turned to see the gloomy-faced man. "Is there a problem?" Doha was speechless. He hadn't expected the Duke to have already sunk so low. However, Zalahan was still obsessing over his stolen first kiss, and now Letty was going to the library with another man, knowing he would be jealous. An invisible confrontation unfolded between the two men, with only Letty in the middle completely clueless. Doha was the first to break the silence, bowing respectfully to the Duke. But Zalahan deliberately ignored him, giving his attention to Letty instead. To break the awkwardness, Letty had to speak up. "Aren't you very busy with work?" "Being with you is more important than work." Although she had been hit by his beauty attacks countless times before, she still had no defense against his smile at this moment. Letty's little face instantly turned red, and the world seemed to contain only the thumping of her heart. "So may I join you?" Do-ha hadn't expected this reaction from the Duke. He could only agree through gritted teeth. "Of course it would be my honor." Though his beauty was lethal to Letty, it was once again ignored by the Duke. Zalahan turned to instruct Stan to prepare the carriage. The old butler was delighted inside. "Well done." Soon after, the three were seated in the carriage. Only Letty was happily fantasizing, "If my friend and my lover could become good friends, we could all play together." Meanwhile, Do-ha turned his head to look out the window, having a feeling he shouldn't have come along. Until he saw the palace in the distance. He finally realized they were going to the royal library. It was then he realized many people in the royal court knew his true identity. It would be trouble if he was discovered. So he had to say he had matters to attend to at the temple, and needed to return quickly. Though Letty felt somewhat disappointed. She soon giggled silly again. "Are we going on a library date?" Then she secretly took hold of Zalahan's hand. Now only two people remained in the spacious carriage. The man kept telling himself, "I'm a duke after all. We're just going to the library, what could happen?" When they reached the library, Letty complained to Zalahan, "Can't you hold my hand tighter? It's almost slipping away." But the man thought her hand was so small and soft that it felt like it would break if he used even a little force. Since this was Do-ha's suggestion, Letty didn't know what they should do. She had planned to just browse around casually. But Zalahan kept following her around like a shadow. Though this behavior was cute, Letty still hoped he would stop following. So she wrapped her arms around the man's neck and whispered, "Go find some books you want to read." The sudden embrace made Zalahan's face instantly turn red. "Do you have to talk to me like this? Because this is the library." "All right, go find your books then." Letty ran off happily, feeling that libraries did have their romantic charm. For instance, this feeling was truly heart-stirring. So she pretended to reach for a book high up, fluttering about, thinking Zalahan would surely come help her. A dark shadow loomed over her. Letty turned around excitedly, only to face an oily pig-like face. The man even tried to corner her against the wall. "Get lost, I don't need your help." Still not giving up, she reached up again. Finally, her anticipated person arrived. Letty nervously asked him, "Did you see?" Zalahan pretended not to know. "See what?" "Either you deliberately picking books from high shelves, or you threatening other men to get lost." Exposed, Letty's face turned red. However, the man leaned in close and told her softly, "I'm very satisfied. This is how you should treat other men from now on." But Letty worried, what if he ran away after seeing her acting coy? "That's for me to worry about. Though if you ran away, I would definitely find you." Such close distance, such warm breath, Letty's heart was racing wildly. "I won't run away." After their library date ended, Letty and Zalahan were planning to go back and have brownies, when they were interrupted by a voice. Looking back, it was his brother Leon. Seeing him bow to the Duke, Letty became nervous. Why was Leon here? What did he want to say to her? Was he planning to humiliate her in front of Zalahan? Her strong sense of pride made her not want the man to see how her family treated her, much less have him pity her. So she sent him ahead. "I'll talk with my brother for a while before coming back." Zalahan wanted to wait for her, but she refused, saying it would take a long time. He could only nod reluctantly. Watching the man leave, Leon burst out laughing, revealing his true colors. "So this is how you live now, by coddling up to that monster Duke?" Hearing him insult Zalahan like this, Letty frowned and warned him, "Watch your mouth, or you'll end up buried in the palace backyard." Leon accused her of disgracing the Blanche family. "Mother is bedridden because of you, yet you live by currying favor with the monster Duke. You might as well come home obediently. What else can someone like you do after running away from home? Whatever, solve your family's problems yourself." Rejected, Leon instantly flew into a rage, and gave Letty a hard slap across the face. The force was so great it knocked Letty to the ground. Their conflict quickly drew a crowd of onlookers. "He hit me. Who was it that made me run away from home? He even dares to hit me now." Leon still wouldn't let up. "As my sister, don't even think about being more successful than me, much less climbing above my head." Letty coldly looked at him. Using magic in the palace would only make things more complicated. And if they fought here, news would reach Zalahan's ears. She didn't want him to find out she was being beaten by her family. That would be too humiliating. so she would make this family line end. A swift kick to the vital spot, directly hitting the target. Looking down at her brother who was shaking in pain, Letty was quite satisfied. It didn't really matter anyway. Only then did she notice the crowd's gossip. He finally felt embarrassed and ran away. But she didn't go back, instead finding a healing clinic. Waited over 2 hours before seeing the priest. The other party took one look. Your bones have developed cracks. The swollen cheek wasn't fully healed. But this was already the woman's limit. Letty hadn't expected a lower-ranked priest's abilities to be so poor, but she had no money for treatment from a higher-ranked healer. But going to see Zalahan looking like this would be embarrassing. What should she do? Just as she was feeling helpless, a hand landed on her shoulder. It was the clothing store owner Charbel. Noticing Letty seemed to be in a difficult situation, she didn't ask many questions, instead inviting her to spend some time at her clothing store. Thanks to you, our store has sold many formal dresses. I was planning to give you a gift anyway, and since we've met, please come receive your gift. Not long after, Charbel put a new veil on Letty. In my business, I meet all kinds of people. Everyone has their own story. Miss Blanche, you've probably had a very difficult day. But I still hope you can end today feeling at ease. Letty hadn't expected that when hurt by her closest family, she would receive comfort from a stranger. She had never met Charbel before, because of her close relationship with the princess. And the princess had once been engaged to Leon, but broke off the engagement after meeting a few times. What should have been an awkward relationship had become close because she had left the Blanche family. By the time Letty returned to Duke Candel's mansion, the household was in chaos. Stan's enthusiasm even made her shrink back. She hadn't expected everyone to welcome her so warmly. A huge crash came from inside the room, only to see Zalahan running over, taking 3 steps at a time, his eyes full of worry, making Letty clench her hands. When he strode forward, she lied that because she hadn't seen them for so long, she spent more time with family, then went shopping at the clothing store, so she came back late. I was worried about you. Let's go back then. But just as he took Letty's hand, he noticed her reddened cheek, instantly becoming wreathed in a murderous aura. What happened to this wound? Who dared to touch your face? Letty immediately felt chills down her spine. Before she could think of what to say, Zalahan had already spoken. Is this from falling or from being punched? After being hit, you received treatment from a lower-ranked healer within half a day, but it doesn't seem very effective. Hearing him accurately describe what happened, Letty couldn't help but shiver. How did he know? Then remembering how he easily cut off her former fiancé's hand, if you find out who did it, will you hurt them? Zalahan brushed back a strand of Letty's hair, his eyes cold. How could I let them off easily? Letty quickly grabbed him. I'm sorry for making you worry, but I'll handle this myself. This was her business, and she didn't want to waste what little time she had left on such matters. The man could only pretend to compromise, saying he would call a priest to treat her properly. Seeing Letty's bright smile, it only made him feel more heartache. But this didn't mean he would let that person off. Zalahan summoned the Shadow Squad's leader. Find out who laid hands on Letty, what happened after I left, and what has happened in the Blanche family. The next day, Doha, as the next pope, was attending the most important annual meeting that only high-ranking priests could attend. Joshua came in, saying he had something to tell Lord Mihai. Can't you see we're in a meeting? Even if you're the next pope, you should properly discipline your subordinates. Doha just laughed mockingly. Yes, seeing how you lecture me, I really should discipline my subordinates properly. The man was shaking with anger, but he ignored it and beckoned to Joshua. News from the Candel family, the healing mage is unwell, they request your presence. Without any hesitation, he stood up. I have matters to attend to, excuse me. Faced with the man's loud rebukes, he just sneered. Bang, the door closed. Those remaining in the room all expressed their dissatisfaction, especially the man who had been rebuked, who seemed to be brewing some plan. Meanwhile, Doha in disguise quickly arrived at the Duke's mansion. From afar he saw Letty already waiting. Letty's instantly blooming smile seemed to make the whole courtyard burst into flowers. In a few steps he was before her, gently cupping her reddened cheek, his expression gradually becoming serious. Who did this? Was it Duke Candel? Letty hurriedly explained. He would never do that. Indeed, if it were him, you wouldn't be alive right now. Doha slowly moved closer. Then who was it? Seeing Letty afraid to meet his eyes, this made him even more curious. If you won't tell me, it's even more interesting. I can find out myself. But Duke Candel will handle this matter, it's not my turn yet. Noticing Letty's expression, he decided not to pursue it further. After all, they were the only ones who could heal each other. If she was injured or disappeared, it would be very troublesome for him. Doha put the magic bracelet he had prepared on Letty's wrist, learning that it contained divine power and had healing effects. Letty exclaimed this must be expensive. Such a precious item she really couldn't bear to wear. She gratefully thanked him and apologized for not preparing anything herself. No need to apologize, just play with me next time. These words were sincere from Doha. When Letty was threatened that bracelet would summon him, he had deceived her, so he was the one who should apologize. Meanwhile, Zalahan was buried in work in his study. Seeing one note, "Too rapid physical contact easily makes people tired of you." He immediately became alarmed, imagining Letty breaking up with him with an indifferent face. The witch's curse seemed to echo in his ears. Who would like a monster like you? No. I can't let Letty leave. I can't let her leave no matter what method I use. The upper body treatment continued again. Letty was very grateful it was in the office rather than on the bed. She didn't notice that Zalahan was desperately enduring her touch during the treatment. Finally waiting for the treatment to end, the man hurriedly put on his clothes. He couldn't let her get tired of him, and couldn't touch her with this ugly body. The curse had given him extreme self-doubt. He even thought this was the only way Letty wouldn't leave. Letty suddenly held up her notebook in front of him. "Shall we cook together? I want to try it with my lover." Too close. He pushed away the nearby Letty, but was grabbed by the wrist and given a little kiss. The intimate gesture made him blush. Faced with Letty's repeated questions, he could only surrender. Soon after, Stan had prepared the perfect kitchen for the two. Not forgetting to remind Zalahan, "Work hard, aim to get married right here." Letty picked up the apron on the table, suggesting Zalahan wear it. The image immediately came to mind. It seems a bit small for Mage. But in Letty's mind she was imagining another scene. But I think it would be really cute. Then let's not wear it, let's just start cooking. At this moment Zalahan was quite preoccupied. How should he say it? Should he say his body is too frightening so he's afraid to touch her? Or that he's afraid she'll get tired of him so he wants to take it slow? After an internal struggle, he awkwardly spoke up, "Letty, shall we take things slowly?" After saying it, he didn't dare look at her. After all, saying out loud not to stimulate him was really ridiculous. However, Letty's quick agreement caught him by surprise. Just that, who could have guessed the two weren't on the same wavelength at all? The cooking began since neither had much experience. They were obviously a bit clumsy. But this didn't affect the sweetheart's bliss. Laughter and joy filled the warm space. When they finally succeeded, Letty cunningly picked up a chocolate-covered strawberry and forcefully stuffed it into Zalahan's mouth. Seeing him finally bite down, she took the opportunity while wiping his mouth to slowly lean closer. "You got something on your mouth." Feeling the soft lips, Zalahan's shy heart was pounding wildly. But Letty was very satisfied with this reaction. The kiss they shared when drunk last time couldn't really count as their first kiss. If they were to do it again, there couldn't be a more perfect moment than now. So she picked up another one for herself. Craftily bit down halfway. "Can you help wipe mine too?" An ambiguous atmosphere spread between the two. Zalahan slowly moved closer, but painfully stopped at the last moment. His tone revealing restraint. "You're too much. Don't you care at all?" Worried about being tired of, he didn't know what to do. Had he not conveyed his urgency and requests to her? It seemed only he was feeling insecure, both embarrassing and saddening. He suddenly stood up under the girl's puzzled gaze, took a handkerchief and gently wiped her mouth corner, then said, "I'll go rest first," and hurriedly left, leaving behind Letty alone, still bewildered in the wind. The next morning, after Letty finished studying how to tame wild animals, she was determined to have a good talk with him, though she didn't know why he ran away again. But to get close to wild animals, you can't let them be afraid. She wouldn't let him run away again. Entering the dining room, she saw Zalahan didn't even lift his eyelids. "Mage, you're here." Curious why she had become Mage again, the other party pretended to read the newspaper in silence. "You're not angry, are you?" "No." "Then why are you calling me Mage?" The man quietly drank his coffee without answering. This behavior was like a cat with bristled fur, making Letty suddenly burst out laughing. "I'm sorry, but you're just too cute. You seem to find many things cute." He glanced up secretly at Letty, though getting upset with her for ignoring my requests and childishly sulking might be a bit much. But immediately softening at hearing her call me cute is really improper. However, this reaction looked even cuter in Letty's eyes. Even if Zalahan could kill people, he wasn't a bad kitty. She deliberately used a cutesy voice to call him, only hearing a crack as the teacup was crushed. But still pretending to be composed, he asked what was wrong. "Can you tell me why you're angry?" For such a simple question, Zalahan had mixed feelings. She might leave me because of disappointment. After all, I find myself pathetic, so what would she think? And Letty deserves to be showered with endless love. Just her looking at me, I'm grateful for a lifetime. But if I don't say anything, I've already made her upset many times. Would she really get tired this time? Because I feel you haven't taken my requests seriously. Hearing Letty ask what requests, he buried his head in the newspaper, embarrassed. Just what I said yesterday about progress, Letty finally realized. Wasn't that about cooking progress? I thought you meant cooking. So you meant physical contact progress? Realizing it was a misunderstanding, Zalahan was mortified. I'm sorry, I did something stupid. This reaction made Letty want to tease him more, somehow moving her chair in front of him. My Zalahan, are you sad that we're moving too fast? Where did that man who said he wouldn't stop go? Seeing him anxiously trying to explain, Letty could barely contain her laughter. Seeing him about to turn and leave again, she quickly grabbed his wrist. You want to run away again, don't you? This mage doesn't want to let you go. The man's heart skipped a beat, instantly putting on a pitiful look and shyly saying, "It hurts, please let me go." Letty hurriedly released her grip when she saw he was in pain. Did I hurt you? Who knew he would immediately escape at lightning speed? Leaving Letty completely dumbfounded. Now he was even lying to escape. Ever since that day when Shirakan shyly ran away, Letty always loved to tease him. Can you come back safely without getting lost? Of course. Don't run away from work because you're shy, okay? I won't. After a sweet goodbye with Letty, the man got into the carriage, but drove out through the city gates, and arrived at an abandoned house in the suburbs. He hadn't specifically explained this to Letty, because there were facts here she didn't want him to know. Long time no see, young Master Blanche. The bandages were unwrapped. Leon cursed, you bastard. Before he could finish speaking, he was rewarded with a hard slap. Seems your head isn't clear yet. Someone like you. How dare you lay hands on my person? Precious Letty, whom I dare not even touch. Yet was struck by someone like you. I don't want to kill you. But remember this well, the only reason I'm letting you off is because Letty hasn't given me permission to deal with you. A few days later, Letty suddenly realized she had been so busy teasing Shirakan that they hadn't made any progress for quite a while. When I was healthy, I couldn't do anything with him. We agreed to date for 3 months, now only 10 weeks remain of our contract time. Will we still have a chance? So she asked the man directly, how slow is this? Taking it slow, you mentioned? Shirakan became shy again. I hope to take it as slowly as possible. Letty couldn't help but feel exasperated. Just how slow did he want to go? She persisted, but I want things to progress faster. A plate shattered. The maid serving nearby trembled in fear. Stan appeared just in time to clear the room. Everyone out. This concerns matters of future generations. The door was closed and the room suddenly fell silent. Shirakan turned his face away. What do you want? Many things, hugs, kisses, and a piece of bread was stuffed into her mouth. The man broke into a cold sweat in panic, afraid she would say more suggestive words. After hesitating, he slowly began to speak. You know that my body is rotting from the curse. It's ugly and frightening. Calling me a monster wouldn't be an exaggeration. So it's still difficult for me to be intimate with you, I'm sorry. He was too afraid Letty would be scared away by his current state, so he preferred to endure this pain alone. But after hearing this, Letty didn't back away. Then there's no choice. I'll just have to be more serious about treating your curse. Since you're so concerned about it, I'll work harder to purify you, so you won't feel troubled and can touch me more easily. The moment he heard these words, a warm current surged through Shirakan's heart. It was as if ripples had stirred in his heart, creating an indescribable feeling. Was this what love felt like? After returning, Letty knew she needed to purify him quickly. But she hadn't even finished purifying his upper body yet. How much must Shirakan be suffering under that curse? Even dating me is already quite difficult. However, thinking about this, she suddenly realized something wasn't right. Considering the man's various behaviors, Could I be his first romantic partner? Time was approaching, and what she wanted wasn't a serious and sincere love, but rather someone who could casually date her for 3 months. For this reason, she needed to confirm. So the next day, Letty sought out Stan. It's nothing major, I just want to ask about Shirakin. Hearing that the young lady was interested in the Duke, the old butler immediately rubbed his hands together. What would you like to know? His assets? The extent of his power? Or the happy life of a duchess? Learning it wasn't about those things, he was quite disappointed. Letty hesitantly spoke up, Am I Shirakin's first romantic partner? Faced with this critical question, Stan knew he had to answer carefully for the sake of the family's lineage. Haha, how could that be? Though I don't know the details, but surely not. Getting a satisfactory answer, Letty was also happy. After a respectful bow, she left humming a tune, noticing a figure not far ahead. Shirakin. The man turned to find Letty already descending from above, landing steadily in his embrace. After being put down, Letty stared at him with sparkling eyes, then opened her arms. Hug me. You said we could hug, right? Come on. Today's hug. Since their last heart-to-heart, they had agreed to hug every day. The hallway is too open and there are too many people next time. Before he could finish, he was already airborne. The door was closed. The two pressed close together. Isn't this a good place to hug? At this moment in the quiet room, with soft fragrance, Shirakin no longer hesitated. He held Letty tightly in his arms. Having achieved her goal, Letty was very satisfied. But just as she was grinning, the next moment her scalp tingled. She pressed herself closer, her body rubbing against his. What's this? Did he bring a sword? Seems not though. Stimulated by Letty, he couldn't help but shrink back. The man pushed her away forcefully, trying hard to control himself. Letty wore a bright smile. Though I haven't had enough hugging, I'm already very content. Shirakin took a deep breath, thinking he hadn't been discovered. But Letty secretly wiped away an almost flowing nosebleed. What a virile young man indeed. Seems there's no need to worry about the lower body curse. His body is still very healthy. The man awkwardly changed the subject. You've been wearing this bracelet often lately. Pretty, isn't it? This is a gift from Dawn. Letty realized she had let something slip, but the man was already burning with rage. He should have dealt with his rival earlier. But books say that frequent or excessive jealousy makes lovers feel tired. He couldn't forgive himself if Letty came to dislike him. Letty didn't know that a world war was raging in his mind right now. She was just frightened by his ashen face. Don't misunderstand. This is a magic bracelet containing divine power that Dawn gave me for my health. Shirakin painfully squeezed out something resembling a smile. I'm not misunderstanding. Friends can certainly give each other gifts. Little did he know his smile looked worse than crying. But to keep Letty, he could only make himself appear magnanimous, telling Letty against his heart that she could spend time with friends when he was busy. In return, she looked touched, happily pouncing on him again. You're the best. However, he could only digest the bitterness in his heart alone. Though Shirakin was clearly in a hurry to get to the palace meeting, he lingered reluctant to leave, making Letty think he needed the bathroom. Who knew he would pull out a box and personally put a diamond hairpin on Letty. This is a gift for you, it's very pretty and suits you well. His large hand gently brushed aside the stray hair by her ear, while also stirring Letty's budding heart. So he was jealous about the bracelet, how cute. The atmosphere was slowly warming up, when suddenly broken by the coachman's voice, Aren't you leaving yet? The two immediately became awkward. Haha, you need to go to the meeting. Yes, I need to go to the meeting. Just as he was about to turn and leave, the next second he held Letty tightly in his arms. This is today's hug. Then fled with a face as red as a monkey's bottom. Not long after, Dawn came, immediately noticing the hairpin in Letty's hair, just not understanding why she was so happy. During treatment, Letty suggested going out to play. Won't your lover mind? I heard they trust you very much. Dawn felt inexplicably irritated. After treatment, the two went into town, eating sweets together, shopping together. Letty even offered to treat. After all, you treated last time, it's my turn now. I'll buy you whatever you want. Then I want the bracelet I saw last time. Letty thought that was too cheap, but the man said he liked it because she chose it. So they bought it in the end. Dawn pretended to have trouble putting it on. Sure enough, this made Letty come help. Thank you, it's very pretty. Curious about the gift bag in Letty's hand, learning it was a gift for her lover, He instantly became emotional. So I'm not the only one getting gifts. The man suddenly brought up a matter. By the way, there's a strange rumor going around. Worried it was about what happened between her and Leon before, Letty felt guilty. What is it? I heard that not long ago Duke Candel broke Baron Segra's arm at the theater because he tried to take advantage of the Duke's companion. That companion was you, miss, wasn't it? Hearing this, Letty awkwardly admitted. But inside she worried about what would happen if her parents found out. They would surely confront Shirakan about taking her away. What if they made some unreasonable demands? The more she thought about it, the more afraid she became, her complexion turning pale. A warm, large hand approached. Darling, look at me. Are you all right? Letty's eyes darted away. I'm fine, don't worry about it. She turned her head to hide her embarrassment. I'm sorry, we were supposed to be out having fun. But the man's gaze was sincere, his tone earnest. Everything will be fine, darling. Trust me. I am your exclusive priest after all. Didn't you say you were a junior priest? The man burst out laughing. Do you really look down on me that much? Then even if it's unfair, I'll have to quickly rise to regular priest. Letty finally smiled. The anxiety in her heart seemed to fade. You need to trust me, I will protect you no matter what. Just as the two were immersed in laughter, the wall beside them suddenly cracked, then collapsed with a crash. Heading towards the two people on the ground at this critical moment, Letty formed a magic barrier. She had only learned the basics of protection magic, so the chances of both of them surviving now were zero. Thinking that she was already marked for death anyway. But he wasn't. If she layered the magic multiple times, there might be a chance to save him. And she would just be 2 months early. In that instant, she thought of Shirakan. Who would purify his curse if she died? Just as life was about to meet its final moment, dawn suddenly blocked in front of her. After the dust settled, the commotion here drew onlookers. A black shadow flashed past. Letty slowly opened her eyes, only to see debris floating in the air. Am I not dead? Faced with the man's sudden reproach, she smiled instead. You're not hurt. Dawn was already choked up with no words. But Letty still cautioned him not to move. If the magic weakens and the debris falls, you'll be buried in the ruins. I'm still casting the spell, so don't worry. He stood up in disbelief. He raised his hand to make the debris float. With a casual gesture, the rocks pattered down to the side. Why did you do such a foolish thing? What are you talking about? Why did you only cast protection magic on me? Letty didn't understand why he was angry, since she was dying soon anyway. Of course she would make such a choice. But she didn't want anyone to know about this, so she said, because you're my friend. Hearing this, Dawn thought she was crazy. They had only met a few times, yet she would risk her life to protect him. He didn't believe in goodwill or self-sacrifice. Everyone just pretended to be kind for their own benefit. But why? Why would you sacrifice your life to protect me? What do you get from this? Are you really doing this purely for me? Letty clapped her hands to interrupt him. Anyway, it's fortunate we both survived and neither of us was hurt. You could even throw away the building debris. You'll be promoted to regular priest soon, right? Looking sympathetically at Letty, forcing a smile. Dawn worried if she was hurt. I'm fine, what about you? Of course I'm fine, since you used magic to protect me. Seeing her pretending nothing was wrong despite being injured made him even more irritated. While healing her, he reminded her she almost died. Hearing this, Letty was unconcerned. Everyone dies eventually. No, you can't die. Do you think I would watch you die? He could tolerate her thinking of someone else in front of him. After all, there would be plenty of chances in the future. But without his permission, she couldn't die. You're not allowed to let yourself get hurt carelessly. Thinking Dawn was just very shocked, Letty nodded in agreement, while the man glanced at the ruins behind. Even an old building wouldn't collapse without warning. He had made up his mind. How brazen. Seeing Dawn's piercing gaze for the first time, Letty suddenly realized, so everyone has their human side after all. Anyway, they should be thankful neither was hurt. By the time they returned to the Duke's mansion, the sun had set. Letty's body was still trembling. As soon as she saw her beloved Shirakan, she immediately transformed into a little bunny, hopping and skipping to his side. You're back so early. Today's hug. Though they had already hugged in the morning, it didn't prevent them from embracing tightly again. But the next moment, the man's expression suddenly changed. Did something happen today? Like an accident? Smelling the dust on Letty's body, Shirakan instinctively knew she had met with an accident. To avoid unnecessary trouble and to prevent him from worrying, Letty claimed she had just tripped on the road. Just a small scratch and Dawn has already treated me. The worried man circled around Letty 360 degrees. Only after confirming she wasn't hurt did he let it go. Did you have fun today? Very much. But I still prefer being with you. Immersed in the joy of teasing Shirakan, Letty, thinking back on everything that happened today, determined to purify his curse as soon as possible. She knew better than anyone how painful this curse was, and hoped more than anyone for his happiness. When she almost died under the building debris, she realized, if she was gone, Shirakan would have to live alone with the curse. This was something she could never accept. So even though she had used up her spiritual power yesterday to protect Dawn, she still decided to purify the curse as soon as possible. But it was still too forced. The purification had barely begun when she started trembling from overusing her spiritual power. Shirakan quickly noticed something was wrong, grabbed her hand to make her stop. By now Letty's face was ashen, her whole body breaking out in cold sweat. Finally unable to support herself, she collapsed onto the man. Hearing Letty murmur that she was cold, Shirakan was about to get something to cover her. Learning she wanted to take a hot bath, he immediately carried her and had the maids prepare it. But Letty would only accept trusted people helping her bathe, and suggested having him help her bathe. In this situation, the man thought of embarrassing scenes and blushed. But faced with Letty's seemingly innocent request and pale face, he decided not to back down anymore. After all, Letty was suffering like this to purify him, and she said she would keep her clothes on. But when it actually came time for the bath, he still added another safeguard. If only for his own virile self. He couldn't step over the line any further. Seeing him like this, Letty was very dissatisfied. Just as she grabbed the man's arm, she saw him suddenly stand up to leave. If you run away again this time, I'll also run far away. Hearing Letty's warning, Shirakan's expression instantly changed. The aura surrounding him made people shrink back involuntarily. Did you mean what you said? He coldly looked at Letty as if he could devour her the next moment, creating a bone-chilling atmosphere. To end this terrifying atmosphere, Letty hurriedly clapped her hands, indicating she meant hiding within the mansion like hide and seek. Though this explanation wasn't perfect, it successfully calmed the man. Because of that thoughtless comment, the man had even decided which rope to tie her with. But she thought he was just joking. Seeing Shirakan return to his familiar self, Letty couldn't help wanting to tease him again. Suggested coquettishly that he help wash her. Hearing this, the man immediately turned red-faced as expected, then broke into a cold sweat. Help you bathe? Until Letty said she meant washing her hair. She finally felt both relieved and regretful as he calmed down. Letty's long pink hair was smooth and glossy. The man treasured it, gently caring for it. Noticing the scar under her hair, asked what happened. It turned out she had been pushed downstairs by her brother as a child. And not only did he not apologize, he told their parents she had started it. The biased parents chose to believe her brother. Not only did they not comfort the injured Letty, they severely scolded her instead. Learning the truth, Shirakan's heart ached. His precious Letty had been treated this way by family. That guy's hands should have been crippled. Hearing Letty continue, afterwards her parents locked young Letty in her room. The helpless Letty stared at the tightly shut door, only able to keep begging them to open it. But her mother said this punishment was to cultivate her patience, so she could only endure. And this was just one insignificant incident among the unfair treatment Letty experienced growing up. She had become so used to such things. So when she mentioned it to the man, she didn't feel particularly sad. Instead joked about her hair color. Someone once said my hair color hurt their eyes. The man immediately demanded to know who said such nonsense, looking ready to go cut out that person's tongue. Letty burst out laughing, telling herself she absolutely must not let him know it was that former fiancé whose hands he had already cut off. Do you like my hair color? Letty smiled radiantly, making the man stare dumbfounded. I like it. Not just her hair color. Everything about her was so beautiful he dared not touch. But Letty went further, suggesting he kiss wherever he found pretty. Shirakan's body trembled involuntarily, feeling the warmth from her hands, and the temptation emanating from her wet body. He actually hesitated briefly, because there wasn't a single unattractive part of her. Did that mean he should kiss her all over? You can start with where you most want to kiss. Getting Letty's hint, the man reached out to embrace her hair. What he most wanted to kiss were Letty's lips, because that was the most direct way for lovers to express their love. This kiss was deep and long, the atmosphere seeming to heat up with the bathroom steam. Who knows how long before they separated? Both their cheeks tinged pink, hearts beating faster and faster, but Letty knew this was Shirakan's limit. So she decisively cupped his face. "Well done," as if both reassuring and making a promise. "Let's kiss again next time." A few days later, under the pretext of a date, Shirakan wanted to buy clothes for Letty again. As they played and joked around, Gerard from the Shadow Knight Order sent out a distress signal. The man promised to leave for a while and return soon. So Letty entered Sharp's clothing shop alone. But as soon as she entered, she saw the shop owner seemed hesitant to speak. Following her gaze, Letty's face instantly turned ashen, only to see her mother, whom she hadn't seen for many days, walking out from the room. Faced with her mother coming forward with a worried look, Letty only felt cold at heart. "If you were worried about me, would you have time for high-end aromatherapy massage before coming to shop for clothes?" Her mother tried to defend herself, but Letty didn't want to hear anymore. In the past, when she could have done something, hadn't she done nothing at all? What was the point of putting on this act in front of her now? Listening to her mother's irrelevant apologies, her chest felt like it was churning. She really couldn't take it anymore. She could only turn and flee without looking back. Such shabby family members. She thought she no longer cared, but feelings in her heart couldn't be controlled. Though she never wanted to return, she still held a faint hope for them. She hated herself for this. Her arm was suddenly grabbed. Looking back, it was Shirakan, also breathing heavily, seeing tears in Letty's eyes. The man's face instantly darkened. "Who made you cry?" Though his voice was filled with death, his fingers gently wiped away her tears. Such a Shirakan made Letty want to rely on him. She nuzzled against his palm like a spoiled child. "I'm not crying. I just came out because I missed you too much." Though knowing Letty was lying, the man didn't expose her. At this moment, he only wanted to hold her tightly in his arms. "Let's just go home today." But she didn't know how luxurious the word home was for Letty. She no longer had a home. Now she was actually grateful she had a terminal illness. After that, Shirakan noticed Letty acting strange. Their daily hugs were no longer initiated like before, but needed his reminding. And during hugs, she was no longer full of energy and vitality, but listlessly went through the motions before walking away absent-mindedly. Though he really wanted to stay by her side constantly, because he had to attend important war-related meetings. He could only go to the palace with anxiety, praying inside that she would talk to him, but he didn't want to force her, only hoping she would open up on her own. Meanwhile, Letty received an apology letter from Sharp. It turned out her mother had begged for help sending it. After letting her leave like that last time, her mother regretted it, because she had many things to tell her, so arranged to meet at the Western restaurant at 5. Clutching the letter tightly, Letty helplessly wavered inside. Why did they only think to care about her now? Though deciding not to return, she still showed up on time. Faced with her mother's fawning concern, she couldn't help recalling her mother's harsh words to her in the past, and became curious what had caused such a big change in her. So urged her to speak quickly. Seeing her daughter so cold, her mother was clearly disappointed. She apologized to Letty for not taking good care of her all along. After her daughter left, she was bedridden for a long time. Not only did no one care, her father blamed her for not fulfilling her duties as lady of the house. Only then did she realize the only one who truly cared for her was Letty. Listening to her mother's endless words, Letty only felt impatient. In the end, her mother didn't even know what had hurt her. She didn't want to waste any more time. "I heard your apology, but I'm not going back." Seeing her daughter leave, her mother apologized shamefully again. Before Letty could understand her meaning, several large hands ambushed her. Before she could react, she was knocked unconscious. Duke Blanche ordered her to be dragged away. For this disobedient daughter, he only felt contempt. "Madam, didn't I say that apologizing isn't the way to make a runaway daughter return?" When Letty woke up, she was locked in a room and handcuffed with magic restraining cuffs. She never imagined she would experience her childhood trauma again. And she hadn't eaten since yesterday. Now she had no strength at all on an empty stomach. "So in the end, I still can't do anything." Suddenly, a small sound came from outside the door. It was Annie, her former maid. In this cold home, perhaps she was the only one who truly cared about her. Annie told Letty that the master was very angry, and said he wouldn't let her off when dawn came. This was completely within Letty's expectations. She only smiled bitterly upon hearing it. Hearing Annie planned to seek help, she hurriedly stopped her. What if you get hurt too? But for Annie, ever since the young lady left like that last time, she had always regretted not doing anything for her. This time she didn't want to leave any regrets. I'll go tell Magician Joel, then steal the key. Don't force yourself to stay here waiting for me. Hearing her footsteps fade away, Letty was anxious. She didn't want her to get involved in this conflict. But no matter how she struggled and sobbed, no one paid any attention. As dawn gradually approached, the warm sunlight shone on Letty, making her exhausted spirit slowly relax. Just then, the door was suddenly opened. Her father and brother appeared in the doorway, seeing Leon's mysteriously bruised and swollen face. Though Letty was surprised, she also felt some schadenfreude. Father said locking her up was to make her reflect, but seeing she showed no signs of repentance, Letty struggled to stand. Why should I reflect? I haven't done anything wrong. The man strode forward, looking down at her and retorting, haven't done anything wrong? Then slapped Letty hard, making her whole body tremble. Then grabbed her shoulders and slapped her already swollen face again. You say you've done nothing wrong. At this moment, thunder suddenly crashed outside, as if condemning these people's treatment of their own daughter. Looking at Letty fallen on the ground, the Duke stepped forward and accused, I spent so much money raising you, yet you dare run away from home to that monster's place, letting your father be humiliated, and even making that monster disfigure your brother's face like this. Don't think about coming out until you've reflected properly. Leon wore an even more mocking smile. Facing his beaten sister, he only felt pleased. Look at yourself now. Do you know what humiliation I suffered because of you? Letty coldly glared at this cowardly man, grabbed Leon's hand and bit down hard. After a cracking sound came the man's heart-rending scream. The man who finally broke free hadn't had time to rage. Before backing down at his sister's fearless aura, Letty's gaze was sharp and fearless, as if telling others that even with her magic restrained, no one dared treat her lightly. Leon, who had never gained any advantage over her, was scared into repeatedly backing away, quickly getting up to flee, not forgetting to remind others to close the door well. Clearly she had gone mad like that monster Duke. Teacher Joel glanced at Letty, silently closed the door. At this point Letty had finally exhausted her last strength, collapsing to the ground with a thud. At this moment her longing for Shirakan came crashing like a tidal wave, missing his doting smile, missing his warm embrace, missing every minute spent with him. Just then Annie's voice came again. Miss, someone who can help you is downstairs now. Duke Candel has come. Hearing this, light instantly returned to Letty's eyes, struggling to stand. Hearing Annie say Teacher Joel had secretly sent the Duke a telegram, she rushed to the window. One glance found that figure she had been desperately missing. Shirakan had rushed over as soon as he got the message. Sleepless all night, his eyes were red-rimmed, his gaze hiding killing intent. Duke Blanche clearly hadn't realized the gravity of the situation. Still had some complaints about his sudden visit. Gerard was already burning with rage, but Shirakan still maintained his composure, saying, I've come to get my lover. Seeing the other still playing dumb, he stepped forward, emphasizing each word. I said I've come to get Letty. Duke Blanche met his piercing gaze. Only then did the man start to fear. He hadn't come to ask for my permission. Thinking of those horrifying rumors about Duke Candel, he suddenly felt he had provoked the wrong person, only to see the other stride forward, telling him to obediently release her. After all, I'm prepared to do whatever it takes to get my lover back. Letty's heart settled the moment she saw him. Shirakan was waiting for her, so she also had to do something to see Shirakan. Grabbing the curtains with both hands, using all her strength to pull them down, wrapped one hand tightly, smashed hard against the window. Stepping on the scattered glass shards, Letty fearlessly came to the balcony, shouted Shirakan's name. The moment he turned, Letty had already climbed onto the railing, then jumped down without hesitation, believing she would definitely be caught safely. And indeed Shirakan ran at full speed the instant he saw, while Teacher Joel secretly cast magic, using magic to wrap around Letty's body, letting her slowly descend, finally landing gently like a feather in the Duke's arms. At this moment Letty felt she had finally found a harbor where she could dock. She was no longer homeless, this man was her home. But noticing the wounds on Letty's face, Shirakan's expression instantly changed. Who dared to hurt you like this? Thinking how he himself didn't even dare to touch her. Yet she was cruelly abused again. Anger could no longer be contained. He turned to coldly look at Duke Blanche. The thick killing intent made both people opposite tremble. Everything around except Letty in his arms turned into murderous aura around him. The horrifying aura gradually spread. At that moment, everyone present seemed to witness death descending. Until Letty turned his face. Shirakan, let's go, I want to go home. Letty was like light in his life, dispersing the darkness surrounding him, while also soothing his bloodthirsty heart. Okay, let's go home to our home. The father who had escaped death suddenly came to his senses, chasing after them shouting, where are you taking my daughter? Shirakan didn't answer, just gave him a cold look. While Letty, who had completely given up on her family, chose to ignore them. Only now did the father realize he had hit her so hard, yet he had already completely lost this daughter. If Letty still had any lingering attachment to this family, that would probably be Annie and Teacher Joel. Annie needed no explanation. While Teacher Joel had been helping her since long ago. Not only secretly teaching her magic but always providing aid. Thank you so much, I won't forget your kindness. Once back at the Duke's mansion, Letty was arranged to lie in bed. Faced with the worried Shirakan, she reached out to hug him tight. Thank you for coming to get me. The man's eyes were filled with heartache. How could she not blame him and even thank him when she was hurt like this? When he learned they had taken her away from his side, he had even thought about destroying her home. Deep self-reproach made Shirakan drop his head powerlessly. I'm sorry, I came too late. But his appearance touched the soft spot in Letty's heart. She lifted the man's face. Can I kiss you? I really want to kiss you right now. Faced with such honest Letty, how could Shirakan refuse? The two slowly drew closer, kissing each other deeply. Shirakan's movements were very gentle, afraid of touching Letty's wounds, but still felt her flinch. Briefly separating, does it hurt? But Letty hugged him tight again. Not enough, don't stop. Worried about pressing on her wounds. The man picked Letty up, letting her sit on his lap. Both their breathing became heavy. Noticing Letty trying to back away, Shirakan thought she was tired. But she hadn't had enough kisses. So he hugged her tight again. Can I keep kissing you? No matter how much they kissed, it wasn't enough. If possible, he really wanted to eat her up. From head to toe. Make you completely mine. Letty couldn't help confessing at this moment, I like you. But then she realized something terrible had happened. She had completely fallen in love with Shirakan. Although she knew they would soon part and knew well how their story would end, she still couldn't help falling for him. While Shirakan made no attempt to hide his feelings, I like you too. Thoughts of you linger by my bedside every night. I've never looked forward to tomorrow like I do now. And for the first time I know how precious each day is. My world is no longer lonely because of your existence. These words can't express how I feel about you. Just seeing you hurt makes me feel like I'm being torn to pieces. It seems no words can express my feelings. So I will love you with all my might. Facing such a rare initiative from the man, she simply couldn't bring herself to refuse. However, Zalahan knew that now wasn't the right time. I've been exercising my utmost restraint. Only because Letty before him was someone he treasured dearly. He feared his curse would taint her. How could Letty not understand his thoughts? Alright, I'll do as you say. The intimate atmosphere hadn't yet dissipated as they were about to continue. Stan, who usually had such good timing, suddenly barged in. Master, miss, the priest has arrived. The old butler immediately choked on his words. Had he known the young couple was busy continuing the family line, he would have waited no matter what. The moment Dasha saw Letty's battered state, his face darkened. Who did this? Which bastard was it? Seeing Letty just give an awkward chuckle, he sighed helplessly. I believe I told you not to get hurt carelessly. It seems you didn't take my words to heart at all. Glancing at her empty wrist, Letty suddenly remembered the bracelet Dasha had given her. Embarrassedly hiding her wrist under her shawl, it was too beautiful, I couldn't bear to wear it. The man looked at her injuries from unknown sources. His mood deteriorated to the extreme. Especially that swollen mouth, it was particularly eye-catching. Come here, sweetie. Pulling Letty's head close against his. As healing light shimmered, he stared at her unblinkingly, deep in thought. Could it be your lover? Before he could finish, Letty had already bristled. It's not like that. I got like this because I was kidnapped. Seeing her reaction didn't seem like a lie, Dasha shrugged. I didn't say anything. But deep down he was quite dissatisfied. Kidnapping? I just said the other day I would protect you. It really hurt his pride. Duke Tandel was too useless, repeatedly letting his lover fall into danger. The injuries gradually faded. To confirm whether she was completely healed, he gripped Letty's arm. Does it hurt? An unfamiliar sensation made Letty involuntarily shrink back. No, it doesn't hurt. I'm fine. Dasha seemed not to notice. You must always wear the bracelet from now on, that's how the healing effect works. Letty touched the spot that had just been touched, still somewhat absent-minded. The man suddenly leaned forward. His large hand caressed her cheek. Ah, sweetie, your face is injured too. Feeling his hand stop on her lips, Letty hurriedly explained, no, it's just swollen from being hurt. How could Dasha not know the difference between swelling from being hit and from being kissed? It was precisely because of this that he desperately wanted to help her return to normal quickly. Because it was too eye-catching. If I gave in to desire, she would probably look down on me. Though being looked down on by her seems quite exciting too, but I don't want to ruin this beautiful relationship yet. After everything else had healed, the pain in her feet became increasingly pronounced. Dasha's quick eyes caught Letty's twitching spot. Seeing her awkwardly squirm while claiming there was nothing wrong. He already knew what was going on. The white priest's robes billowed. When Letty came to her senses, she saw the man already kneeling on one knee, both hands holding her foot. You weren't planning to just leave it like this, were you? Gently removing the glass shards from her foot. Letty cried out in embarrassment, it's dirty. She didn't want Dasha to see her in this state. Because she felt he must have been raised with love and care. Of course, if she knew the true environment Dasha grew up in, she wouldn't think that way. As soon as her body recovered, Letty came to find Zalahan for purification. Though very concerned about her condition. Unable to resist Letty's persistent pleading, he had no choice but to obediently remove his shirt. Even though she had seen it many times, Letty still couldn't help but swallow. Well then, shall we begin? If purifying the upper body required removing clothes, then how should they proceed with the lower body? Zalahan, who had removed his shirt, didn't look as composed as he appeared. He hesitantly knelt on the bed. His eyes constantly darting away. And after noticing Letty's reddened cheeks and wavering pupils, the atmosphere began to grow awkward. Letty raised her hand and gently placed it on the man's firm chest. Forcing herself to concentrate. The dark marks like shattered glass gradually faded away, and the wounds that looked like rotting skin disappeared. Letty happily announced, the upper body purification is complete. Zalahan looked at his clean, smooth skin in disbelief. He never thought he would live to become normal again. His eyes couldn't help but turn red. Thank you so much. At this moment, the man no longer knew how to express his gratitude. But Letty seemed to understand his thoughts, stepping forward to place a kiss. It's too early to thank me now. Because I'll soon purify everything for you, the lower body purification will also. Before she could finish, she realized the awkwardness hidden in her words. Shyly turning away to hide it, looking at it this way, how should we purify the lower body? Should he take off his pants? She quickly pretended nothing had happened. The next purification will take a long time, let's rest first. That is to say, we'll confirm next time. Zalahan saw through her shyness, and was equally worried Letty would misunderstand him. So he forced himself to explain that that part was fine. Letty didn't need to ask to know which part he meant. Moreover, she had felt more than once that that part wasn't just fine, but very healthy indeed. Letty felt herself about to melt, stammering for a while, then I'll head out first. Who knew her stomach would choose this moment to growl indiscreetly? To avoid more embarrassment, Zalahan decisively suggested having dinner first. This commotion lasted until evening. Letty lay in bed recalling the day's events. From waking up at Duke Blanche's house, to jumping from the second-floor window, then deeply kissing Zalahan, receiving treatment from Dasha, and completing the upper body purification. The events that happened in this single day were almost unbelievable. Although what happened at Duke Blanche's mansion made her angry, she was still grateful to Annie and teacher Joel who helped her. Though she wanted to bring them over, but even she was living under someone else's roof, how could she do that? Thinking of this made her heart ache. Why did I foolishly dedicate myself to my family? If not for knowing she had a terminal illness, perhaps she would have been controlled by them her whole life. Let alone enjoying this sweet romance with Zalahan, she probably wouldn't have even had the chance to meet him before being married off to Marquis Segra. Just thinking of that greasy face gave her goosebumps all over. Rather than living such a terrible life, it would be 100 times happier to enjoy this brief life before dying. But the problem was that she was too happy, so she didn't want to die. Remembering their confession on this bed earlier, Zalahan's answer also came to mind. Her ears tingled. What was originally just a contract relationship? But today, when she jumped from the second floor of Duke Blanche's mansion into his embrace, when he treasured her so dearly, kissed her, she discovered she had fallen in love with him. She buried her face in the pillow, drawing a breath from deep within. Just thinking of Zalahan's kind face made her heart tingle. Not just because he was handsome, but that thoughtfulness and unconsciously revealed cuteness. And though he tried to hide it, his faintly visible jealousy. Letty alternately pounded her hands on the pillow. But he doesn't seem to be madly in love with me. So even if I die, he should be able to live on well, right? After all, I'm just his 3-month girlfriend. Though it felt fortunate, her chest still hurt strangely. Suddenly there was a huge crash, a bright light shone through the large window. Letty was startled upright by the deafening thunder, but her father's figure appeared before her eyes. He was viciously waving his arms at her. The fear in her heart amplified infinitely. Thunder struck forcefully again. Letty curled up in fear, covering her ears. But it brought no relief. Father's raised palm appeared again. Letty finally couldn't escape the fear, crawling out of bed. She fled the room in panic. Save me, won't someone help me? Anywhere would be better than staying alone in the dark. Finally she ran to Zalahan's room. Seeing Letty's pale face and terrified eyes, the man was somewhat shocked. What happened? It's cold outside, come in first. Letty stumbled into the room. Sitting on the sofa, trembling all over. Zalahan wanted to let her drink some tea to calm down, but seeing her just keep shaking, he asked if she was feeling unwell somewhere. No, I'm just afraid of thunder. I seem to be more afraid of being alone. In that instant, another flash of lightning appeared. Letty was so scared she tightly hugged the man beside her. Zalahan hadn't expected this. But feeling Letty's fear, he also held her tightly, only hoping to comfort her anxious heart. But Letty's next words instantly broke through his defenses. Can I sleep here tonight? The man clenched his teeth tightly, swallowing his rising anger. He wanted to go back to Blanche immediately, personally gouge out the eyes of those who had abused her, cut off their limbs. But he knew that wasn't what he should do right now, so he just held Letty's body tightly. Until he heard Letty say she wanted to sleep here tonight. I'll just hold your hand. Zalahan didn't answer immediately. She didn't know if he was joking or serious. Getting no response, Letty retreated dejectedly, thinking it wasn't allowed. She quietly pulled back. Never mind, I'll sleep by myself. Sorry for making such a strange request. Just as Letty was about to stand up, Zalahan hesitantly reached out. Who knew another bolt of lightning would strike? Letty immediately squeezed her eyes shut, trying to erase her father's cruel face from her mind. To stop herself from shaking, she curled up tightly. The thunder kept rolling, her breathing became increasingly rapid. Suddenly the deafening thunder softened, her cheeks felt warm. It was Zalahan covering her ears with both hands. Open your eyes. She saw the man's handsome face staring directly at her in the darkness. Though expressionless as usual, Letty could see the concern hidden within, his blue eyes rippling with worry for her. Facing his gaze, her trembling gradually lessened, until the thunder completely stopped. It's all right now. Letty smiled gently, color returning to her face. Thank you. Worried she would be scared by thunder again, Zalahan finally agreed to let her sleep in his room. Letty nuzzled his broad palm, thanking him again for taking her in. Not long after, on the spacious bed, Letty placed her hands on her chest and promised, I really won't do anything, so don't be afraid. Zalahan lay stiffly, saying, I'm not afraid, while cold sweat poured down his body. Who knew the now calm Letty would immediately show her true nature and start poking him wildly with her finger. The man covered his chest like someone being harassed, nervously looking at Letty saying, Don't do that. But the more he acted this way, the more it encouraged Letty to poke at his whole body more actively. Stop it, quit it. Her wrist was grabbed. Letty opened her eyes wide in surprise looking at him. Zalahan slowly opened his mouth, his voice deep and restrained. Don't make me do something to you, please. Just then, another sudden flash of lightning once again triggered Letty's fear. The man realized she was deliberately joking around. Even though she was scared, she pretended everything was fine. Why do you force yourself to be strong when I want you to rely on me? I hope you can entrust everything to me. Maybe then this vague sense of unease would disappear. Meanwhile at the Blanche mansion. The Duke was in a towering rage. After Letty left with Zalahan. When Duke Blanche came to his senses, he started protesting. Gerard deliberately mentioned that Letty was seriously injured. She was perfectly fine until yesterday. The man quickly weighed the options, compared to the negative impact if news of his domestic violence against his daughter spread. Letting Letty leave seemed like it would be the smaller loss. And this was the result Gerard wanted to achieve. He coldly shifted his gaze and noticed someone standing on the stairs. When their eyes met, Leon remembered he was the person he saw when kidnapped by Duke Candel. At that moment the demon's voice he heard in pain echoed in his ears again. He immediately lost his footing, rolling down the stairs. Afterwards the Duke sent people to the temple to request help. But several hours passed and they only said there were no priests available to come. How could that be? His son's leg was broken, yet there were no priests who could come treat him immediately. In his heart he thought if Letty were here she could heal him. This dead girl was never around when needed. Actually, he had long known Letty was born with extraordinary magical power, stronger than Leon and stronger than himself. But he never properly educated or developed it, all for Leon's sake. Leon was the Blanche heir. If he saw his sister possess stronger abilities it would discourage him. Besides, no matter how you educated Letty she would still be Letty. There was no need to spend money educating a daughter who just needed to marry well. Now there was no other choice. Prepare the carriage immediately, I'm going to the temple. Soon after, quite a commotion broke out at the Altion temple. Heal him immediately. With so many priests not one can heal? You disrespectful lot. Who dares make such a racket in the sacred temple? The sudden voice made Duke Blanche turn his head. Lord Mikhail High Priest, the lower priests all bowed in greeting. The newcomer was the next pope, Mikhail Dasha Velian. The man's golden pupils were extremely gloomy. I'm asking what's going on here. Though inwardly he was already jubilant. Finally it's my turn to make this guy pay. Duke Blanche knew well he couldn't offend someone like this. He hurriedly stopped the unrestrained Leon, indicating it was his own rudeness. My son needs treatment. I was anxious and came here imprudently. Of course he wouldn't know it was Dasha who prevented the priests from going. Oh my, it seems my subordinates made a mistake. To express my apologies, I'll personally treat him. Among the fierce curved brows, the man's golden pupils flickered with a strange light. But the Duke failed to notice, overjoyed at hearing the high priest would personally treat him. This treatment was something even Duke Candel hadn't received. If he could establish a good relationship with the next pope, perhaps he could regain his past glory. Then he instructed his son to seize the opportunity well. He was going to become pope after all. Though Leon was somewhat unwilling, he still obediently followed along. After entering the room, Dasha locked the door. Then asked how he was injured, learning he had slipped. He strode forward, grabbing the man's wrist, ignoring his painful struggle. Is this wound also from that? The red swollen hand still bore clear tooth marks. To Dasha, even Letty's tooth marks were cute, but they shouldn't be left on this guy. After having his hand pulled back he hurriedly apologized, but this only made Leon more angry. So as soon as he finished receiving the high priest's treatment, he threw his father's advice to the winds. You low-born bastard. I've heard the next pope Mikhail Dasha Velian is the son of a street prostitute. You think those rumors are baseless? You shallow fool. Dasha faced his contemptuous gaze with a cold laugh. Duke Candel was too gentle. Only beating you like this and leaving for someone who dares to be so presumptuous and arrogant. At least your limbs should have been crippled. How soft-hearted. Leon's face immediately turned red. Having grown up pampered, he had never been insulted like this to his face. You bastard! He clenched his fist and swung at Dasha, but was easily dodged. At the same time his foot was tripped. He fell flat on his face like a dog eating dirt. Leon didn't understand how he had dodged it, while Dasha seemed to read his thoughts. How could someone who grew up on the streets not dodge such a flowery punch? Compared to what I did to survive, fighting is really nothing. Leon tried to stand up, but his vision was blurred, his body heavy, and he felt dizzy. When he finally raised his head he saw the man bending down. On that divinely beautiful face rippled extreme madness. Feeling dizzy? He trembled and gasped for breath. What exactly did you do to me? Dasha crouched down, resting on his arms with a contemptuous smile. I just tangled up your spiritual power channels, that's all. If left untreated, your body will burst apart in a few months. How about that? Interesting, isn't it? You lunatic. Feeling all the blood drain from his body, Leon was so scared his head spun, his lips trembling, unable to say a word. While the man just chuckled a few times, continuing leisurely, unless someone stronger than me comes along, no one can heal you. Of course such a person hasn't appeared yet. You'd better be smart, young Master Blanche. Cursing damn it in his heart, but not wanting to die, Leon finally realized the gravity of the situation. His tone became humble. What should I do? A large hand covered his forehead. If you dare lay a hand on Letty again, that will be your death. Meanwhile, Letty was currently excitedly drooling. God thank you. Opening her eyes, Zalahan's face was right in front of her. You're awake. Being able to see such a handsome face first thing in the morning, this feeling was too amazing. Letty wiped away her drool with a hiss. You look very tired. Didn't you sleep well last night? Did you only sleep for an hour or two? The man got up. Wearily answering her, it wasn't like that. Actually, he hadn't slept all night. Being held by his beloved Letty, he couldn't possibly fall asleep. What are you going to do today? Letty gently lifted the blanket covering her. I want to go find Dasha first. She wasn't aware how tempting she looked right now. Zalahan noticed immediately and sharply turned his head away. Go ahead. Then I want to sleep with you again. The man was confused at first. After realizing what she meant, his face immediately turned red. Fortunately, Letty was just joking. While Zalahan felt relieved, he was also somewhat disappointed. Sleeping together once was probably enough. He wasn't sure he could hold back anymore. Wearily leaving the room, he ran into Stan, who had been standing outside the door for who knows how long, his face showing an emotion close to choking up. Master, I always believed. Zalahan didn't understand, but instinctively felt his next words would be unpleasant. Sure enough, the old butler's wrinkled face bore a smile warmer than spring sunshine, his eyes shining brighter than ever before. I believed it would come. How should we prepare for the wedding? The date? The wedding dress? Of course we need to consider the young lady's wedding preferences. He busily poured out his grand wedding plans, having even considered baby names. But was silenced by Zalahan's hand over his mouth. Stop, say no more. Stan wasn't satisfied. Why won't you let me speak? We need to prepare in advance. Marriage is a lifetime affair, we can't neglect anything. Zalahan held his forehead and sighed helplessly. Marriage? What an ill-fitting word for him. I never thought I could get married or even fall in love. But I still can't help looking forward to it. Marrying you. I actually want to vow to be with you forever at our wedding. Just thinking of touching wedding vows. His face turned as red as a ripe tomato. His large hand covered his upturned mouth as he tried to calm himself. I don't have plans to marry yet. The butler, who had been excited just moments ago, was suddenly struck by lightning. But didn't you share a room? Zalahan shyly turned away. I didn't do anything that would require taking responsibility. I'm heading out, hurry and prepare. Having the marriage he thought was in the bag suddenly turned to bubbles. Stan felt it was absurd. A couple in a romantic relationship sleeping in the same bed, yet nothing happened. Could there be something wrong with the master? This was possible. After all, he had always been busy on battlefields, still just an inexperienced child back then. Thinking of this, the old butler gave a hee-hee laugh. Well, then it was his time to shine. Soon after, Letty came to the Altion temple without prior appointment, saying she wanted to find the junior priest Dasha. The receiving priest was confused. Then, hearing her describe him as a handsome guy with silver hair, the man immediately thought of the high priest before he could speak. Joshua came running from somewhere. I know, I'll take you to him. Looking at the luxurious room before her, Letty's eyes widened. For a junior priest to live in such a room, seemed the Altion temple was very wealthy. Dasha, who pushed open the door, clearly seemed somewhat flustered. Why did you come without contacting me first? For this, he had hurriedly changed clothes with Joshua's help. I deliberately didn't contact you. Surprised? I was quite startled. Dasha pretended to curl his lips in a smile. So what brings you here? Surely you didn't come just to surprise me. I just wanted to thank you for healing me yesterday, and mainly I have something to ask of you. The word ask made the man narrow his eyes. Is this woman also only getting close to me because she needs something? Only to see Letty clench her fists as if making a great determination. Please teach me how to control magic. The unexpected request left Dasha somewhat puzzled. But I'm a priest. The essence of divine power and magical power is almost the same, and I'm a purification mage. Though I have a lot of spiritual power, I'm not good at controlling it. Because I want to become stronger, to handle difficulties on my own. I only trust you, you're the only one I can ask. Alright, Letty, I agree. However, if I agree to your request, will you also agree to my request? Whatever request I make. Having to agree to whatever request you make, isn't that a fraudulent contract? What if you make me write with my feet or do acrobatics on the street? Dasha was completely broken down by her sincere questioning, finally managing to control his expression. Then just agree to my requests when you're not forcing yourself, decide based on your conscience. This level should be fine, right? The two happily reached an agreement. Letty was about to start practicing magic right away. Faced with such an interesting Letty, Dasha just wanted to become the person closest to her. Perhaps once he grasped everything about her, he would quickly lose interest. Just as he was about to gladly agree, Joshua pushed open the door, saying someone was looking for him. Realizing it might be the old man coming, he had to postpone to next time. Letty also didn't want to impose, after all, she had come suddenly. I'll come find you soon. As she left, she still pretended to thank her senior for lending the room. The act was too sudden, Joshua hadn't thought how to respond, could only force a stiff smile. Letty didn't think much of it, just assumed Dasha's situation wasn't good and had to borrow rooms from others, secretly deciding not to come find him so rashly next time. Seeing Letty leave, Dasha quietly criticized Joshua's poor acting. I'm not like you, Lord Mikhail, being an old hand at this. Learning it was High Priest Hybrapa causing trouble again. Dasha sighed helplessly. The current pope's condition probably wasn't very good. He feared Dasha becoming pope and wanted to restrain him. Soon after, Letty happily threw herself into Zalahan's embrace. We arrived home at the same time, could this be fate? Zalahan felt the same way. He thought this day had been very boring, only being with Letty was the happiest. Had she perhaps purified his heart along with everything else? At this moment, Stan began his performance on the side. Claiming the new maid was careless and had soaked all the blankets in water, washed them, but they weren't dry yet. Though the master's blanket was fine, the young lady had no usable blanket. Zalahan wasn't concerned. Can't we just buy one? It's a small matter. Stan was prepared, explaining they had already looked everywhere but couldn't find blankets of quality suitable for the Candel mansion. It would take several days for new stock to arrive. Surely they couldn't give the young lady poor quality ones. However, Zalahan completely missed his well-intentioned hints, decisively countering, "Then just give her my blanket." This move left Stan dumbfounded, inwardly crying that he couldn't handle this. Fortunately, Letty refused, otherwise his scheming would have been for nothing. To prevent his master from going off script again, he hurriedly suggested they spend another night together. Letty agreed readily. But this shocked Zalahan. "What's wrong, don't you want to sleep with me?" Though the man's brain was completely fried, he didn't deny it. Letty turned with a smile, promising him, "Don't worry, I'll tease you like I did last night." How could he know that wasn't the problem at all? Never mind, as long as he could control himself it would be fine. But while the idea was nice, reality was harsh. As bedtime approached, Zalahan was already pacing anxiously. There was a knock at the door. Letty came over in her pajamas. And brought cake too. Though the man's current mood was like an ant on a hot pan, he still tried his best to go along with Letty. Learning she liked cream cake, he quietly decided that from today on he liked it too. Cutting a piece to feed Letty, cream stuck to her mouth. Letty worried that if she played any more tricks, Zalahan would run away, so she prepared to find a tissue to wipe it. Unexpectedly, he suddenly turned her face. The distance suddenly closed. "Didn't you say this was something lovers should wipe for each other?" Though he said he was going to help Letty wipe her mouth, his eyes looked like he wanted to devour her. Scared, Letty kept backing away. "I'm full, I'm done eating." But Zalahan was still hungry. How could he let her go so easily? His large hand wrapped around her slender waist. The sensitive touch made Letty also become aroused. Until the man separated breathlessly with misty eyes. Seeing Letty was just like him, gaze hazy, face flushed red. He smiled in satisfaction. "I'm full now." Letty, her heart in tangles, shyly stood up, taking 2 steps at once and flopping onto the bed. "I want to complete your purification quickly." Zalahan also slipped under the covers. "What do you want to do after the purification is complete?" "Well," Letty didn't continue. "Good night." Looking at Letty, who had fallen asleep beside him, Zalahan felt that as long as she stayed by his side, everything would be fine. However, just as he thought this, Letty's hand reached over. She rolled onto him, rubbing back and forth. especially her soft body pressing tightly against him, directly stimulating the man's blood to surge. I should move away, but if I move she might wake up. Painfully controlling himself as he slowly shifted his body. But Letty's long legs suddenly draped over, landing right on that sensitive spot. The tortuous suffering made Zalahan really want to cry. Finally morning arrived. His gaunt face showed he hadn't slept again today. Letty looked at the butler's note by the bed. It rained heavily this morning, the blankets aren't dry yet, it seems you'll need to stay in this room for a few more days. She didn't think anything of it, but Zalahan beside her felt he was doomed. By the fourth day, the exhausted Zalahan finally fell into a corpse-like sleep as soon as he lay down. Letty admired his sleeping face. Even asleep he was so handsome, truly a national treasure. However, at this time Zalahan suddenly spoke. His face that had been like a sculpture became distorted, cold sweat sliding down his forehead. "Stop, mother." Letty had heard rumors about Zalahan before. They said his ducal parents died when he was very young. The family's wealth and honor were seized by distant relatives, and he wandered the battlefields with that cursed body. She reached out to stroke his forehead. How difficult it must have been at such a young age. "I will definitely purify your curse completely, both body and soul. So you can live happily and ordinarily like others. Even after I'm gone. You can continue to be happy." Letty smiled, this was like her life's goal and final wish list. But suddenly her wrist was grabbed. Zalahan, who seemed deeply asleep, sat up, looking at her in disbelief. "What did you just say? Did you say you're leaving?" Her heart almost jumped out in fright, but Letty still pretended to play dumb calmly. "Me?" Finally managing to get the man settled back in bed, she knew there was only a little over a month left in the contract. "Really don't want to part from him, fortunately he only likes me and isn't in love with me." Gently patting Zalahan to sleep, Letty promised she would always be with him. Just until the contract ended. This time Zalahan finally got a good sleep. Letty softly snuggled up, "Looking at your current state, it seems we can start purifying your lower body." They awkwardly made eye contact. Their delicate faces immediately flushed with embarrassment. The usually proactive Lottie became hesitant. Well, the lower body purification could wait until next time. She would go see Madame Charvet first. Since Zalahan also needed to go to the Imperial City, he reluctantly agreed. "Let's do everything together from now on." The man nodded obediently again, guessing she wouldn't make any strange requests. Indeed, Lottie didn't have any other thoughts in mind. At most, she just wanted to go swimming, soak in hot springs, see the ocean, and attend festival dances together. After meeting with Charvet, she apologized for what happened last time, and decided not to receive Blanche anymore, though Lottie was an exception. Noticing a shadow behind the gauze curtain, the girl thought he had a guest now. So she planned to come back another time. "You don't need to leave," the curtain was suddenly drawn back, revealing the Imperial Princess herself. Although Lottie felt awkward, she still took the initiative to curtsy. Because when Blanche hadn't fallen yet, the princess and Leon were engaged. But she knew her brother's character all too well. Later, due to their conflicting views on life and values, it ended with Leon being beaten up by her and the engagement being called off. She hadn't seen the princess for 5 years since then, having been avoiding her out of embarrassment. But the princess had changed so much in these 5 years. She explained that she never meant to burden her, though she hadn't expected their fate to be so deeply intertwined. The beauty-loving girl was instantly conquered. "Anyway, since I've been disowned by my family, I don't need to mind appearances anymore. So dropping her earlier reserve, please call me Lottie." Such a forthright personality was clearly to the princess's liking, making her feel they should have met sooner. So she reached out to caress the girl's cheek. "Of course, Lottie. You can call me Algira too." This beauty attack was impossible for someone weak to looks to resist. She nodded frantically in agreement. The three made plans to meet and chat often. Only after leaving did Lottie realize belatedly she would be leaving soon. Why did she keep making promises? But this was actually the first time. Why did all these good things start happening when she was approaching death? Well, after she went traveling and quietly passed away, no one would know anyway. As long as the bonds weren't too deep, it would be fine. A knock at the door interrupted the drowsy girl. Dao Xia wondered why she hadn't come down yet. Then he led the girl to an open space with particularly good air quality. The spiritual energy was pure and flowed rapidly. It was the best place for practice. First, try using magic as you normally would. Lottie channeled her spiritual energy. Thick tree roots burst from the ground. Dao Xia spotted the issue at a glance. She was using unnecessary spiritual energy, causing great drain, like using a cleaver to kill a chicken. So he suggested she channel spiritual energy into him instead, to carefully feel how the energy flows. Lottie hadn't expected his hands to be so slender and soft. Under Dao Xia's guidance, she raised her hand to try again. Suddenly there was a series of loud crashes, accompanied by ground tremors. The moment the girl sensed something wrong, she reached out worriedly toward the man. But this made Dao Xia waver again, just like when the building suddenly collapsed last time. Though she knew she was more powerful, she would still rush to save him every time. How could he not be moved by this? So he held the girl tightly. It's all right. He hugged Lottie close and cast protective magic to gently soothe her. Nothing will happen. Until everything returned to calm. Noticing the towering trees that had sprouted around them, Lottie hugged him even tighter excitedly. Dao Xia, I think I'm a genius. Only then did she realize their posture was perhaps too intimate. Fortunately, he quickly pulled away, pretending to be composed with red ears as he changed the subject, listening to his serious nonsense. The girl clenched her little fists energetically. All right, teacher, I'll leave it to you then. On the way back, Lottie was still savoring her progress. While Dao Xia regretted that such a genius had never been taught before, it seemed her family didn't care about her at all. Feeling his wildly beating heart, he became puzzled. Shouldn't he be getting bored by now? Could it be he was interested again because of her talent? Then she brought up the festival that was being held. Her intention was to invite the girl along. But who knew the first person she thought of was Zalahan. Ah, thank you so much for today. Being friends with you is really my blessing. What could the man do under the title of friend? Sigh, heartbreaking. When Lottie got back, she immediately told Zalahan about the festival, wanting to ask him to go together tomorrow. But he hesitated because of his curse. Then when can we go? Do we really have to wait until the curse is completely purified? She then pulled open his shirt, revealing clean, muscular skin. See, your upper body has no curse left at all. I won't force you too much. We'll just go to the night market later and we'll wear masks the whole time. So will you come with me? The girl's words seemed to have a magical power, enchanting him to nod in agreement. The next day they changed into commoners' clothes. As promised, they came to the festival. Lottie put on a white rabbit mask, while Zalahan wore a black cat mask. The two happily ate and drank like a normal couple. The man who was attending for the first time was obviously a bit stiff. People's gazes seemed different from before too. No longer fear and disgust, but rather they were all sneaking peeks at them. Realizing this made his heart suddenly speed up. He lowered his head and kissed the girl. I want another bite. Lottie was startled and raised her little fists to hit him. But in the end it only resulted in her own burning pain. You're mean, she said as she turned and strode away. How did he become so skilled? He wasn't like this before. She was actually quite moved too, but when she turned around, her heart dropped. She saw a woman making advances towards Zalahan. The man was surprised that she wasn't afraid of him. Although evolution had greatly weakened the smell, this was still unprecedented. Even so, he promptly rejected her and looked around searching for Lottie. But the woman wouldn't give up, still trying various ways to cling to him. Having witnessed all this, Lottie turned and walked away again. If I leave, Zalahan will fall in love with another woman. This is something I've known all along. But why does it hurt so much? Isn't his happiness what I've been wishing for? I can't get jealous over something so small. At this moment a man appeared behind her. Seeing her breathing heavily, he thought she was unwell somewhere. He invited her to sit down and offered her his just-bought drink. He even took a sip first to prove it was safe. Lottie removed her mask to express thanks. Who knew the man would fall in love with her at first sight? This made Zalahan knock over the vinegar jar. He drew his sword to strike, but was blocked squarely by the other party. You dare to draw your weapon in front of me? Do you not want to live? The red-haired man remained calm. I don't want to die. Are you her lover? He even brazenly taunted. I think I'm more handsome. Lottie couldn't tolerate this. She immediately gathered a magic array. Take your sword away from my lover right now. Hearing this, the man finally lowered his sword and apologized. I thought you were lying. If I had known you really had a boyfriend, I wouldn't have confessed to you. Lottie angrily walked closer. Whether it's true or false, rejection is rejection. You arrogant fellow. But he wasn't bothered. I really did fall in love with you at first sight. What a pity. Then he turned and left. Zalahan suddenly embraced the girl from behind. Burying his head in her hair, why did you leave me behind and walk away? He dared not imagine what he would have done if she had actually accepted that person's confession. Lottie reached up to stroke his head, explaining she was just wandering around and ended up getting lost. Thank you for finding me. Learning that the girl had been waiting for him, his mood improved, noticing his hands still trembling from worry. The girl turned and hugged him. I'm so sorry, you must have been scared. I won't do that again. Lottie was so sincere that it left him at a loss. Noisy sounds came from far away. It seemed it was time for dancing. But they had both lost their masks. If you're tired, we can just go home. Zalahan firmly replied he wasn't tired. This surprised Lottie. You'll definitely stand out, is that okay? It's fine, I have you, don't I? In the cheerful music, the festival goers paired up to dance. Unlike social balls, this looked very free. Lottie felt drawn to it. Let's dance too. Zalahan never thought he would have such a day. Once the rotting corpse smell mixed with people's disgusted and terrified gazes. His existence was an absolute outcast that could never fit in. It was Lottie who gave him a new life, gave him the chance to live on as a human. Who would have thought that a monster like him could mingle in crowds, dance with them? Even though he danced awkwardly, she still found him adorable. How could he not love her like this? I love you. I love you too. In the brilliant, dazzling fireworks, the two slowly drew closer, but was stopped by his girlfriend. We're in public. Zalahan was frustrated. He turned to plant a kiss on the girl's palm instead. His eyes were hazy and alluring with desire. It instantly made Lottie blush scarlet. The soft, tender sensation made her little heart pound wildly. The man thought she didn't like it. It wasn't that she didn't like it. Can I kiss your lips this time? Lottie didn't want to be outdone. She asked in turn, do you want to sleep with me? Zalahan was also shocked. Sleep? Was it the kind of sleep he was thinking of? Taking advantage of the man's bewilderment, Lottie felt she had finally scored a point. You don't even have that kind of resolve yet, still want to kiss me? She didn't give him a chance to defend himself. This is punishment. Kissing is forbidden for a while. Oh no, Zalahan's heart shattered. Are you serious? Surely you can't be? The next day, despite lingering at the door for a long time, he didn't get his daily kiss, and had to hesitantly ask, none today. What? Thinking of how she usually called him cute while kissing his face red, he tentatively said, you're so cute. Afraid she didn't understand, he quickly covered his face and explained, I mean the kiss. But Lottie firmly told him, no more kissing today. Didn't I say I was going to punish you yesterday? Did you forget so quickly? Zalahan could hardly believe it. Are you serious? Very serious. I won't kiss you in public next time, so please. No, I have to stick to my word. Still not giving up, he suddenly moved his face right in front of Lottie. Really, no kissing allowed? He leaned in closer. But the girl managed to hold firm in the end. No using good looks to persuade me. Not caring about Zalahan's dejected look, she told him to be careful on his way. As the door closed, Lottie could barely contain her smile. This is so fun. Zalahan begging me is so thrilling. Let's tease him for a few more days. The poor man was already feeling lifeless inside. When would this end? Several hours later. When meeting with Dao Xia, she was still immersed in joy. Learning it was because their date was successful, the man felt like a clown. He was the one who wanted to date her, but ended up helping someone else. Well, let's practice spiritual energy instead. At this point, Lottie suddenly remembered meeting a strange person at the festival yesterday. A man from the West suddenly confessed to me. What a weirdo. How did he confess? The girl coughed awkwardly. He said he fell in love with me at first sight. You know, because I'm a bit cute. But Dao Xia unexpectedly didn't respond, making her feel embarrassed, wondering if her joke was too cringeworthy. Actually, she didn't know that the man was angry. How dare anyone approach Lottie so casually? However, seeing the girl constantly looking for his reaction made him feel tender affection. That's right, dear, you're too cute. Dao Xia looked around. Are you planning to wreck this clearing again today? Lottie lowered her head deeply at the mess her magic had made last time. I'm sorry, teacher. We're not learning magic today, it's time to learn practical combat. Hearing this, the girl's enthusiasm immediately surged. Where would they start? Learning it would begin with the basics. She thought it would be attacking, escaping, or restraining. But surprisingly, the first lesson was about killing. Dao Xia raised her hand and placed it on his chest. Using magic at this position would definitely cause instant death. Dao Xia, what are you doing? Lottie's voice trembled. The man's smile sent chills down her spine. His melodious voice spoke words of extreme cruelty. Come, kill me, my lady. This kind of joke isn't funny at all. I'm not joking with you. Enough. The girl pushed him away forcefully. She couldn't understand why he treated life so carelessly. She herself wanted to live but had limited time left. At this moment, jealousy, hatred, and even misery swirled in her heart, making her feel resentful for the first time. While Dao Xia just narrowed his eyes, studying the girl before him. What does my lady think practical combat is? Lottie hadn't thought much about it, carefully choosing her words before answering enough to travel alone. After all, she would go someday. However, Dao Xia, who had struggled at the bottom since childhood, told her. The streets aren't so harmonious, even if you just go to the outskirts of the capital. You'll immediately become the best target for those overbearing bullies. Don't you know? Remember, if you attack without being prepared to kill, then the one who dies will be you. Dao Xia's words made Lottie thoughtful. Because her life had entered a countdown, she wanted to travel before death. But she didn't want to be at others' mercy, so she wanted to learn self-defense. And she planned to leave quietly without telling anyone. This world indeed wasn't friendly to her. So if she wanted to protect herself, she needed to be ready to hurt others. Seeing her mood drop, Dao Xia had his own difficulties. Although he could save her just by touching her neck, he didn't want to put her in danger. That's why he spoke harshly, hoping she would understand. Taking Lottie's hand again and placing it on his chest. Be prepared to kill me when you attack. Seeing the girl still firmly shaking her head, he promised he wouldn't just stand there defenseless. Besides, if I get hurt, you can heal me, right? But it will hurt if you get injured. Dao Xia was confused again. It was that feeling again. Every time he saw her, he would experience this strange state. The feeling of his heart racing uncontrollably was really annoying. He decisively drew out his fan, not planning to give her more time to worry needlessly. Come block me. Dao Xia's movements were fast and precise. Lottie couldn't react in time and was hit. After that, she couldn't dodge even once. Repeated failures made her grit her teeth in frustration. Just when she thought she had finally dodged, she got hit again. The man chuckled lightly. Is your magic just for decoration? This reminded her though. Thinking of magic that wouldn't hurt Dao Xia, she decisively extended her hand and cast, Take my strike. Facing the water magic surging toward him, Dao Xia calmly opened his fan to defend. I prefer bathing in warm water, let's skip this. The powerful water flow repeatedly crashed against a wall, then cascaded down in reflection, drenching Lottie like a drowned rat. Not giving up, she was about to try again. But by the time they returned to the mansion, she was already completely exhausted. No, Zalahan was in the bathroom. She thought it was time to start purifying his lower body. But thinking about directly touching skin made things a bit difficult. However, Zalahan would be wearing a bathrobe, so she could just purify directly. Thinking this, she darted to the bedroom. At this time, Zalahan, who had just finished bathing, was still somewhat dejected, wondering when the kissing ban would end. The girl's sudden appearance startled him. He hurriedly tightened his bathrobe excitedly, only to see Lottie slowly approaching, then suddenly pushing him onto the bed. Let's start purifying your lower body now. I'll start from the knees, she said, about to act. Zalahan quickly retreated. No, absolutely not. You're thinking wrong. This is the only way I can purify, so please take it seriously. After speaking, she placed her hand on his exposed thigh. The sudden touch made Zalahan involuntarily shiver. Lottie inwardly remarked how serious his curse really was. Thanks to Dao Xia, using magic had become much easier. The purification soon ended. But when she looked up at Zalahan's expression, she was shocked. The man was breathing heavily with a flushed face, his blue eyes seeming both angry and restrained. The girl looked down and saw his restraint had reached its limit. Zalahan suddenly drew close. Lottie awkwardly turned her head away. Wasn't kissing forbidden? His large hand cupped her fair face. Without a word, he kissed her. The mingling of lips and teeth made one increasingly lost. Suddenly everything spun. When she opened her eyes again, she was lying on the bed. Their lips overlapped again, and his muscular body pressed against her soft one. This pressure was both pleasurable and exciting for her, making her involuntarily cry out. Zalahan separated with difficulty, breathing heavily. Did I kiss you blindly without preparation? If I'm prepared now, can we continue? Without waiting for the girl's answer, his gentle kisses began falling. Lottie's eyelashes trembled slightly, her mind in chaos. My first night with Zalahan. Though she had fantasized about it countless times. No moment seemed more appropriate than now. She didn't want to miss this chance, so she wrapped her arms around the man. Zalahan understood the meaning of this gesture. He easily removed her dress. Seeing her beautiful pink hair scattered on the bed, cheeks tinged with rouge, purple eyes hazy and seductive, every pore seemed to exude deadly charm. The man was about to remove his robe, but thought of his unpurified lower body and hesitated again. She'll probably be disgusted by my condition. I should wait until I'm completely purified before. However, as if seeing through his self-doubt, Lottie's hand gently caressed his handsome face. Forehead touching forehead, you're beautiful too, every part of you is beautiful. Then she softly kissed his lips. The girl's words seemed magical. I believe what you're saying is true. She was his savior, his everything. Suddenly being pulled close. Continue, Zalahan. Of course he would fulfill her wishes. But the next day, Lottie regretted it. Visibly exhausted, she couldn't help cursing him as a pervert. In contrast, Zalahan was now radiant. Even wanting to go another round while it was still early. Although she initially cried out that she would die of exhaustion. Faced with Zalahan's angelic face pouting, she hesitated. She agonized. She really couldn't refuse. Forcefully pulling the man's robe, all right, just one more time. Then another storm of passion ensued. It wasn't until the sun was high that Lottie arrived at Count Osman's mansion for the appointment. The princess had clearly been waiting for some time. She curtsied, lifting her skirt. Thank you for inviting me to the tea party, Your Highness. You're supposed to call me Eldra. Thank you, Eldra. She lovingly patted her head. Good girl. Help, it was a heart-throbbing feeling. It turned out the princess's close friends often gathered here, so she wanted to introduce them to her. Lottie couldn't help feeling nervous. I hope they'll like me. Who wouldn't like you? Oh no, her heart skipped a beat again. The tea party members weren't many. Zamber Charvet, the proprietress. Huyana, Count Osman's eldest daughter. And Shalia Mirchin. Having already cut ties with her family, Lottie introduced herself without her surname. However, this drew an impolite inquiry from a certain green tea. Speaking of no surname, are you a commoner? How did a mere commoner get to know Her Highness Eldra? Innocent questions, naive comments, awkward atmosphere. Was she doing this intentionally or unintentionally? Before Lottie could answer, Huyana and Eldra stopped her. The other immediately switched to damsel in distress mode, sobbing an explanation. I'm also new to social circles. If I offended you, I'm sorry. The kind-hearted Lottie didn't think she meant harm, quickly saying it was fine. After this brief episode, everyone returned to cheerful conversation. When the tea party ended, Huyana called her aside, speaking softly. Shalia hasn't been playing with us for long either. Because her debut ball was quite difficult to hold, Eldra saw her pitiful state and brought her here. You'll be more comfortable keeping some distance from her, she naturally lacks tact. Of course you'll need to judge for yourself. Lottie hadn't responded when she heard someone calling her name. She turned around in surprise, only to see Zalahan striding over. I missed you, so I came. Then he approached her front like a big puppy wagging its tail. This left the princess and others so shocked their jaws nearly dropped. Noticing others, the man immediately bowed formally. Hello everyone. Then he prepared to take Lottie back, leaving behind the greatly impacted princess with a questioning look. Was this really the Duke of Candel she knew? After getting in the carriage, the girl learned Zalahan still had to return to the imperial city. Coincidentally, she also had an appointment and couldn't stay with him long. Hearing this, the man coughed twice and stared at her intently. A blush colored his cheeks as he bit his lip, wanting to speak but unable to. I want to hold your hand. Lottie found this Zalahan absolutely adorably cute. Without hesitation, she cupped his face and kissed him. Soft kisses fell on his bridge of nose, cheeks, lips, but this wasn't what the man wanted. He supported the girl's head with one hand and wrapped her slender waist with the other, taking control. This kiss was gentle yet lingering. Until both were breathing heavily as they separated, Zalahan murmured. Today I learned carriages are quite nice places too. His gloved hand slipped between her fingers, intertwining and gently rubbing. The seduction made Lottie's face instantly turn red. "What are you saying?" Zalahan covered her lips again, kissing me without even having the final resolve. "You need punishment too." His eyes were sultry, his smile seductive, making the girl sigh again at how handsome he was. Handsome to the extreme. At this moment, the little person in her heart began stirring, urging her to kiss him fiercely. But the man drew closer and closer until the coachman's voice came, "Master, we've arrived." Lottie hurriedly pushed open the door and got out in a panic. "Haha, we're here? Wow, that was fast." Watching her run away without looking back, Zalahan, who had been pushed off his seat, couldn't help laughing. "I'll see you at home later." Feeling like she'd been tricked, the girl protested softly, "If you keep doing that, I'll sleep in separate rooms." Soon after, she saw Dao Xia standing in the crowd. "Your attire is a bit different today, dyed with something quite distinctive." To Lottie, before her was just a face like that of a deity. Learning that they would practice invisibility today, her eyes immediately lit up. Invisibility is very useful for survival. Excitedly exclaiming that Dao Xia was amazing, "You're the best." So happy, yet the speaker meant nothing while the listener took it to heart. Simple words left the man's heart unclear. He himself didn't know why he was like this. It's not like she said she liked him. Lottie clearly hadn't realized the issue, asking expectantly what they would start with. Dao Xia tried hard to appear calm. "Today's learning goal is to hide your presence in crowds so no one can sense you." Then he gave a friendly explanation. Lottie channeled spiritual energy as he said, then grabbed his hand. "Is this right?" Just hours ago, Dao Xia had experienced another assassination attempt. Though he dealt with it in a few moves, the bloodied body left him helpless. The girl was afraid of him getting hurt, wouldn't even attack properly. If she saw him in this state, she would probably distance herself. He had no choice but to change into commoner's clothes. Even he couldn't understand why he would go to such lengths for the girl. Could it be that his interest in her was growing stronger, making him so strange? Because he despised the emotion of love. He didn't even want to have the misconception of liking her. But the girl's soft hands, radiant face, made him understand his feelings. "I think I want to possess you. If you knew I was both the high priest of Altarion and the next pope, having power no less than the emperor's, would you be interested in my status? No, perhaps you would be disgusted by my unsightly past. Although you weren't raised with love, you're still a noble duke's daughter after all. If you knew I was actually someone who crawled up from the streets, perhaps you would be angry about being deceived." The moment he imagined the girl's disgusted face, his heart instantly filled with desolation, and he also noticed he was being targeted again. 2 times in one day was too annoying. He told Lottie he had something to buy and would be back soon. The girl nodded in agreement. "Go ahead, I'll practice." Glancing in the distance, Dao Xia confirmed there was a capable knight protecting her. So he worried no more. Turning, he quickly disappeared into the crowd. Just after turning into a deserted alley, the assassin appeared right behind him, laughing while extending a 2-meter-long tongue to lick the dagger, making Dao Xia unable to help but mock. Couldn't they send some higher-caliber assassins? After licking the dagger clean, the person finally prepared to strike, fiercely jumping 3 meters high while shouting for him to rest in peace. Just as Dao Xia was contemplating how to cleanly dispose of him, a clear, melodious call rang out, followed by the girl's figure, bathed in sunlight, anxiously rushing over. He called out "dangerous" while driving spiritual energy with all his might. Terrifying elemental magic instantly filled the narrow space, and finally pointed toward the assassin. As red liquid splattered everywhere, Dao Xia, stained with blood, was now flushed and incredulous. Similarly blood-splattered, the girl didn't hesitate at all, just urgently concerned if he was hurt, as if his safety mattered more than anything else. Noticing the girl's trembling hands, the noble raised duke's daughter was even afraid of hurting others. Yet she killed someone for him. This thought made his heart tremble. His heart beat like mad. At that moment, he finally understood he had fallen in love with her. The girl he loved was in his arms, but he dared not possess her, because he never believed in feelings. So when he discovered he had helplessly fallen in love with Lottie, it made him instinctively resist. It must be a misconception, could only be a misconception. How disgusting to speak of things like love. But faced with the girl who kept comforting him despite her own fear, he completely surrendered. While telling her he was fine, he used spiritual energy to purify them both. Thank you for saving me. Thanks to you I survived. In an instant, both returned to their original state. He turned Lottie around. Let's go back for today, I'll help you to the carriage. Also thoughtfully blocking the assassin's corpse on the ground. Even so, the girl's state still wasn't very good. Dao Xia understood, this was Lottie's first kill. Although it was unavoidable, she couldn't easily cross that mental barrier. So when she was about to get in the carriage, he called out to her, Lottie, that person just now came to kill me. It's because my family found a mine. Sudden fortune easily attracts trouble, so don't worry. That assassin deserved death anyway, and you saved my life, that's a fact. You only need to remember that. Hearing his explanation, Lottie thought about how hard it must be for such a gentle and beautiful Dao Xia. Naturally understanding his good intentions, thank you, Dao Xia. Take care of yourself. The gentle caress made the man's heart race. How he wanted to tell her right then that even such small contact made his heart flutter endlessly. But he could only restrain himself. Go quickly, my lady. Before he couldn't help but cling to her. He had to escape from her side. When Lottie returned to the Duke's mansion, Zalahan was already waiting for her. She instantly switched to a smile. He was busy enough, she didn't want him to worry. But the man still keenly noticed something was wrong. What happened? Who bullied you? His blue eyes were sharp on his gloomy face. Nothing happened really. She finally decided to hide it. Hugging the man's arm tightly, I'm so hungry, let's go eat quickly. Seeing this, Zalahan stopped questioning. However, his gaze swept behind them. Gerard, hidden in the darkness, silently shook his head. Contrary to what she said, this meant something had happened. The man's veins instantly bulged. If she didn't want to say, she didn't have to. If she lied for his sake, he was grateful. Although this was cute, he couldn't do nothing. Receiving orders, Gerard instantly vanished into the shadows. In the dining room, Stan led the servants in preparing a small surprise. Hearing it was popular among young people lately, he personally baked a cake. Zalahan's face showed rejection, but Lottie smiled happily, thank you. She answered in a bright voice. But her heart couldn't stop churning. 50 days had already passed. Less than a month remained. Her heart palpitations kept getting worse, her heartbeat so loud she couldn't hear anything else. Only the doctor's explanation echoed in her mind. Your heart is beating very fast, you can often hear your own heartbeat, it's likely to get more severe, then your body might explode. She didn't want to die in front of Zalahan. Didn't want him to see her body explode. This was the first man she had loved so much. So before the worst happened, she needed to leave early. But could she really bear to leave him behind? Yet her reluctance to part from Zalahan was even stronger. From their first meeting, when he avoided her completely, to his gradual changes later. Although their time together wasn't long, they had already experienced so much together. Zalahan's body was about to finish evolving. When the curse disappeared, his overjoyed expression was still vivid, his psychological trauma seemed much better too. Now he went out without bandages, especially leaving their beautiful memories together at the festival. But now time was pressing, she could give up everything else, but she definitely had to travel with Zalahan. During this time, those terrible past experiences suddenly surged up, impacting his constantly wavering heart. It's okay, just like always. Just endure it. After all, she was used to it. It was time for another tea party. Zombir happily brought out her first imported goods from the eastern continent. Although they were all hair ties, everyone got different colors. The princess jokingly complained that she didn't need such things anymore. Letty quickly noticed Shalia looking a bit unhappy on the side. It turned out she liked pink but received a white one. Look, my eyes are also a beautiful pink color. The meaning behind her words couldn't be more obvious. Her behavior made the other girls uncomfortable. To avoid awkwardness, Letty said she didn't mind, but since Zombir had prepared them thoughtfully, she wanted her permission. If you don't mind, then let's swap. Huyana and Elge both gave Letty concerned looks. But she really didn't mind. Because she was used to Leon taking things from her since childhood. So she never felt particularly possessive about anything. The little green tea immediately became happy after receiving the gift. But soon her little mind had new thoughts. Oh right, Letty, what's your relationship with Duke Candel? Are you dating? The others were so surprised by her direct question that they spat out their tea. The person in question hesitated as they were contract lovers, but she couldn't say that. So she just smiled, which was taken as confirmation. Seeing this, the other girls immediately opened up. This is the first time I've seen the Duke smile. This is the first time I've seen him bring a woman to a salon. This is the first time I've seen such a handsome person, but why are there such rumors? These words immediately brought everyone back to reality. They unconsciously recalled the previous Duke Candle, emanating the smell of rotting flesh, instinctively making people feel terrified. It was Huyana who broke the awkwardness, saying regardless of looks, the important thing is he has a lover now. So you two, will you get married? Letty maintained a polite smile. Sorry, I'd rather not answer that question. The little green tea nodded upon hearing this, then covered her mouth and giggled. Letty caught this and felt confused. What's going on? Meanwhile, at the training grounds, Shalahan was sparring with Gerard. His attacks were fierce, leaving his opponent completely defenseless. With a clang, the long sword fell. He elegantly sheathed his sword. Doxia Alker, a merchant's son, had embarked on the path of a believer since childhood. The information was too perfect, as if prepared in advance. Gerard realized it was because of yesterday's incident where the lady killed an assassin to save the priest. He hurriedly said he would reinvestigate and report. Also, what do you plan to do about the meeting's content? Are you preparing for war? It turned out the relationship between the Hal Empire and the Danube Kingdom hadn't improved. So the ministers proposed launching a war. And naturally their eyes fell on the Empire's strongest warrior, Duke Candel. But Shalahan didn't plan to go to war. If it were before, he would have volunteered without hesitation. But now he had his own love. He had no intention of leaving her behind. To prepare things needed for departure, Letty went to the city. Each time Doxia treated her, he gave her a lot of money, so now she was quite wealthy. If someone tried to rob her this time, she would have to punish them with magic. However, Letty was clearly overthinking. Gerard, who secretly followed behind, had already cleared all obstacles for her. When she finished buying everything, she hadn't seen a single bad person. Instead, she spotted the tall Elge in the crowd. Just as she was about to go say hello, she heard some vulgar comments from the side. How can a woman be that tall? It probably wouldn't feel good to hold her in bed. Would anyone want to hold her? This was absolutely intolerable. Hearing bad things about her friend was even more unacceptable than hearing them about herself. Letty immediately called out to the two men. Pretending to be admiringly, she said her friend had something to tell them in that alley. Hearing this, the men immediately got excited, thinking it was their charm. They eagerly followed. However, when they got there, they found no one. Then Letty cast her magic. Watch me punish you two in the name of justice. With a thunderous roar, the vulgar men were already lying on the ground. The girl couldn't help but mutter, not much of a challenge after all. Unexpectedly, Elge suddenly appeared behind her. Did you do this for me? I'm so touched. I didn't know you were such an excellent magician. Would you consider working for me in the future? Looking at her handsome face made it hard for Letty to refuse, but she had no future. Elge didn't rush for an answer. Well, we can talk about the future later. Let's go eat something delicious today. And with that, she dragged her away. This scene happened to be witnessed by Doxia, who was out. From behind, he couldn't recognize who it was, only seeing it was a man. And it was another man besides Duke Candel. And in his mind there was only one thought: eliminate him. But what am I really? He tried to convince himself against his heart. I just want to use that woman. I just want to be by her side. I don't love anyone. As soon as the Pope's condition worsened, assassins targeting him began appearing one after another. Anyone could guess it was orchestrated by great priest Sibaraparu. Although he was stronger than himself in both authority and connections, Doxia's abilities were stronger than anyone else's. That's why he became the next papal candidate. It wasn't easy to eliminate him. But the other party brought up his frequent outings. Are you hiding something nice outside? Like having a lover. This was something he couldn't tolerate. Can't let him find out. His precious girl whom he cherished. Even more, can't let this venomous person harm her. You have quite an imagination. I warn you not to provoke me anymore. Because once I go crazy, I don't know what I might do. However, the other party wasn't intimidated, still mocking that he looked just like his mother when caught up in love games. These words completely ignited Doxia's fury. He grabbed the man's collar without restraint. Seeing Doxia about to lose control from Paru's provocation, he quickly grabbed his arm. But for a boy who grew up struggling in the streets, Only his mother was the sole light in his dark childhood. Even after being abandoned and sold, he still couldn't tolerate others desecrating her. So facing the culprit who slandered his mother, Doxia wanted to tear him apart alive. Although Joshua didn't know what happened, he knew he needed to calm him down to avoid future trouble. So he quietly reminded him, "There's a message from Duke Candel's mansion saying your friend is looking for you. I've been answering as instructed that I don't know, should we contact them?" Hearing this, Doxia immediately lost his temper. "Letty is looking for me." However, Paru's words seemed to wrap around him like poison. That person would use Letty as a hostage, absolutely can't let him find out. What if something happened to Letty without my knowledge? And if I see Letty again, I'll have that illusion again, mistakenly thinking I've fallen in love with her. So can't contact her. But the reality before him deeply slapped her face. Doxia gripped his chest tightly. The dull pain there couldn't be ignored. "This feeling is just my illusion." But she finally surrendered. "Tell Duke Candel's mansion I'll visit tomorrow." Meanwhile, Letty, who had been taken away by the princess, was now enjoying food. "I didn't expect we'd get along so well. If it weren't for your brother, we probably would have met earlier. But recently there have been some rumors about him." The girl heard this and became curious. What rumors?" "They say she got a serious illness, staying home and not going out. Some say her face was horribly disfigured. There are also rumors saying she became disabled due to an accident and got a spiritual force-related illness, making the Duke and Duchess panic. That illness seems to be called Rockadura. Hearing it was the same incurable disease as hers." Letty's heart started racing again. Could that disease be hereditary? Elge noticed her pale face. "Because it's about your family member, I thought I should tell you. Seems like it hit you hard, sorry." However, at this moment Letty felt nauseous. Just thinking about how they had the same disease but received different treatment made her angry and resentful. Thinking about how she would be alone with nothing in the future made her so scared. At this time, the princess concernedly held her hand. "Are you all right? Your face looks terrible." The girl smiled faintly. "Of course I'm fine, couldn't be better." She didn't want anyone to see her die miserably, she just wanted to stay alone in an empty place. The next day, Letty finally waited for Doxia to come. "I couldn't contact you recently. Do you know how worried I was? Were you busy investigating the mastermind? Did you get hurt anywhere?" Thinking of that venomous man, Doxia sighed helplessly. I'm fine." The girl finally felt relieved, lightly tapping his shoulder. "With our relationship, you should keep in touch with me often." "What kind of relationship do we have?" As soon as he said it, the man regretted it. He had unconsciously blurted it out. Fortunately, the girl didn't think much of it. "Of course we're best friends." "Yes, we're good friends. Very close friends." Letty guessed perhaps it was thanks to Doxia that she hadn't fallen ill and held on until now. If she could die without pain, she would ask for nothing more. While at this moment, Doxia's heart was pounding because of holding hands. "Should not be able to feel my heartbeat through the hand. Would she hear my heartbeat? If you found out, would you avoid me?" Suddenly, the old butler abruptly came in. "Miss, there's a letter for you." During the time Letty was reading the letter, the two men had already exchanged challenging glances. Seeing it was from Elge, the girl immediately brightened up. And hearing the words soul mate, Doxia immediately thought of the man he saw on the street yesterday. What to do? He wanted to kill again. The green tea finally made a move on Shalahan. She thought that with exaggerated flirting, she could easily capture Shalahan's heart, not knowing that he only had eyes for Letty. Just now, the ministers again argued red-faced about Candel going to war. But no one considered Shalahan's thoughts. How would they know? Time after time facing comrades' sacrifices in war, experiencing threats of death, had long made Shalahan tired of the battlefield. Now he only wanted to live peacefully with his love. Is this too much to ask? Why won't everyone leave him alone? Suddenly his shoulder was poked. Turning around, he saw an unfamiliar face. Smiling in greeting, "Lord Shalahan, we meet again." Hearing someone casually calling his name, the man immediately frowned in displeasure. Only one person could call him by name. But since she was Letty's friend, he couldn't make things too awkward. "Miss Milchin, I haven't given you permission to call me by name." Sorry, Lord Duke Candel, it's because I'm used to Letty calling you that way." "By the way, do you remember my name?" "I told you before." Shalahan was speechless. She seems to be Letty's friend. "Looks like you don't remember. I'm Shalia, you can call me Shelly." Looking at the little green tea's affected pose, The man's whole body screamed rejection, really wanted to make her leave, but she was Letty's friend so he had to endure. Just don't know how long he needs to endure. Then heard the little green tea say she was close with Letty and they agreed to meet again. Shalahan thought about whether if Letty had more female friends, would she see that priest guy less. Although I don't know what other nobles think, but I believe it's wrong to choose friends based on status. The little green tea always thought Letty was a commoner, and she as a baron's daughter didn't mind. So she could get closer to Shalahan. While the man thought she was saying Letty didn't mind the status difference between princess and baron to be friends with him. He couldn't help but want to see her more, what to do about thinking of her all day. However, seeing him smile, the green tea thought it was because of what she just said. She couldn't help but marvel at herself being an angel from heaven, actually able to tolerate lower class. Not knowing she herself was the clown. So she shamelessly tried to invite the man to dinner together. Shalahan really didn't understand what she was trying to do, but out of politeness said if Letty was willing then okay. The little green tea's body froze. Did he mean just the two of them? The man didn't want to hear more nonsense, decisively bowed and left. Instantly, as if his feet grew wings. Looking at his departing figure, the little green tea's heart started racing. How long can a commoner talk with a duke? Thinking of Shalahan's shy smile just now, she narcissistically mumbled, I need to be careful not to let him fall for me before he breaks up. But seems like it's already too late. Meanwhile, on the other side, Letty heard Doxia mutter soulmate. Suddenly realizing he seemed to feel left out, hurriedly explained they were just acquaintances before. Now they've become closer, a very good friend, and they get along well. Letty, I hope at least in front of me. You could only pay attention to me. As soon as he said it, Doxia belatedly realized he had said too much, quickly apologizing, sorry, I was a bit harsh just now. Seeing his somewhat hurt expression, Letty took his hand on her own initiative. Let's start our lesson. For some reason, the man felt his heart was in chaos. So much that he was a bit absent-minded during the lesson. Turning his head, he happened to glimpse outside Candel's knight, stealthily heading in a direction while concealing himself. Although something felt off. As long as it didn't harm Letty, it wasn't his business. However, he didn't know this small oversight almost hurt Letty. After finishing class with Doxia, Letty used invisibility magic to move around the mansion. No one discovering this made her happy enough to fly. At this rate, what if I become the happiest Letty in the world? Unexpectedly, as soon as she entered the bedroom, she found a stranger, who had also concealed himself. Seeing her come in, he hurriedly explained, saying he was a new knight under Candel. Got lost because he wasn't familiar with the place. Why are you invisible in the mansion? Shadow knights all move invisible. Although I'm new, my abilities aren't bad, but you seem very powerful. Sorry for disturbing you, this definitely won't happen again. Smiling as she sent the fleeing man away. The girl's face immediately darkened. Then she found Stan, telling him there was a thief in the house. Shortly after receiving the news, Shalahan ran back frantically. Holding Letty tightly, he was really too scared. Even though the new hire had gone through strict screening, he almost let his love fall into danger. Knowing he had so many enemies, yet still wasn't careful enough. If Letty got hurt because of this, he simply couldn't imagine. Trembling as he held the girl, saying sorry over and over. Feeling his endless self-blame, the girl comforted him, saying she was fine. I'm perfectly okay, right? Nothing was stolen and no one was hurt. I really am fine. She really liked this feeling of being cared for. The relieved Shalahan instantly lowered the pressure, making the two people opposite him tremble in fear, yet softened again at the girl's kiss. Just as he wanted to continue, she pulled away instead. I have plans tomorrow, going to bed first. As soon as Letty left, Shalahan returned to his previous state. The ins and outs of the matter must be sorted out clearly, and subordinates must be rewarded and punished appropriately. Learning that Guy had escaped with all the new hires, his face darkened further. These people came prepared, even their background information was fake. Even more impossible to know the purpose of infiltrating the mansion. Bring him to me within a week. From then on, the mansion was filled with tension. Shalahan also stayed by Letty's side inseparably for several consecutive days. Finally getting to go out for afternoon tea, Shalia insisted on pestering her to arrange a dinner with Shalahan, saying everyone could get closer who couldn't see through her little scheme. Both Huyana and Elge thought her request was too much, but she remained oblivious. seeing Letty unmoved. The green tea started emotional manipulation. Is having dinner with friends too much to ask? It's not too much. I just don't want to do it. Letty firmly rejected the green tea's suggestion. When asked if there was any special reason, she just casually explained because Shalahan is very shy, thinking of the cold and decisive Duke from the rumors, actually cuddling up in the girl's arms. Elge couldn't help but feel nauseous. Shalia was so angry she was shaking. She had looked down on commoners from the start. If not for the princess's sake, she wouldn't have been so friendly to her. Just relying on the support of Her Highness and Shalahan, acting all high and mighty. How dare a mere commoner stay by Shalahan's side? Really think the Duke would marry her? Then she turned her gaze to Elge, wanting her to teach this lowborn a lesson. Little did she know Letty could guess her petty thoughts with her eyes closed. At this point she had no more interest, making an excuse of not feeling well to leave early. Sorry for ruining everyone's mood, see you next time. Seeing the girl striding away, Huyana was about to call her back. But the princess beat her to it. However, watching Elge rushing out after her, the green tea smiled knowingly. Her Highness is quite passionate, actually scolding her for my sake. Although Letty was indeed a bit discourteous, it didn't warrant such anger. Hope Her Highness won't scold her too harshly. Huyana sitting aside couldn't bear to watch. Actually, Letty had long known that Shalia had feelings for Shalahan. I've always given in to her, doing whatever she asked. Even accepting unreasonable demands, but why is she never satisfied and always greedy? Now I have nothing left. Why does she want to possess even my remaining Shalahan? She was my first female friend, I don't know what to do. Was it wrong to want to make friends before dying? Suddenly someone called out to her. Turning around, it was Elge who had run until she was out of breath. She apologized for not stopping Shalia's rudeness. I'm sorry, Letty. The noble princess bowing to apologize, Letty immediately felt overwhelmed. Why are you apologizing? Quick, raise your head. Elge explained that she brought her because she couldn't bear seeing Shalia unable to fit into social circles. Huyana also couldn't fit into social circles because of her impulsive personality. But after she stopped caring about others' opinions and played with them, she looked very happy. So she thought Shalia would be the same as her. That's why she brought her along. Just didn't expect people are different, she needs to talk to Shalia alone sometime. Seeing my friend hurt, I really feel heartbroken. So when these things happen, don't hold back. If you can tell me frankly, I'll be very happy. Letty didn't expect the princess to be so straightforward and caring. Her earlier unhappiness instantly vanished. You must be tired from running over here, be careful on your way back. Seeing she was fine, Elge finally felt relieved. The two happily hugged each other. However, their intimate interaction was completely seen by Doxia. It was that Elge man again. If she could date that guy while dating Duke Candel, does that mean he had hoped to? He thought he must be crazy, getting excited and coming early to wait just thinking about seeing the girl. Even just thinking of her would make his mood fluctuate. He didn't know what exactly he wanted to do to her. Whether he wanted to possess her or stay away from her, who would inevitably destroy him. However, after Elge passed by him, Doxia looked utterly disbelieving. Letty glanced at where he was, tentatively saying, "You came so early, Doxia." The named man then revealed himself. "How did you know I was invisible?" Seeing she had guessed correctly, the girl was extremely proud, excitedly dancing around. While Doxia looked again at the departing Elge, so it was the princess. His heart started pounding wildly at this small discovery. His eyes looking at the girl were full of wild joy. Hearing the girl explain that she had seen high-level invisibility recently, so it was easier to understand. Doxia looked at her adoringly. "You've improved so much," thinking in a while she should be able to detect the knights following her. Looking at the girl's radiant smile, his heart beat faster and faster. "I can no longer escape. No matter how I deny it or struggle, I will always end up standing by your side." Just when he thought one more evolution would completely cure him, Zyalahan could hardly believe it. This curse that had tormented him his entire life seemed like it would never let him go. A terrifying curse. But Letty appeared like an angel to save him, making his once broken life increasingly happier. With an excited heart and a beloved face. In this moment he couldn't help himself, cupping Letty's delicate face and kissing her deeply. What followed was another intimate scene. 2 hours later, Letty was completely exhausted. Looking at Letty's disheveled state caused by his own passion, Zyalahan felt restless. However, faced with such an anxious boyfriend, Letty couldn't bring herself to be stern. "If you continue being this cute, do you remember what I said I'd do? You said you'd swallow me up like a lollipop." "That's right, be careful, I'm quite a fearsome woman." But these days made her feel so good. "Once the evolution is completely finished, let's go on a trip, whether it's to the seaside or riverside, anywhere is fine as long as I'm with you." However, this was something the former Zyalahan wouldn't have dared to even dream of. A first trip with Letty. How wonderful and romantic it would be. "I really like that suggestion. There's a place near the sea in Kandel territory. The hot springs there are also famous." "Great, let's go there after the evolution is complete and before summer comes." Meanwhile, Gerald, who had stayed up for several nights, was nearly dead. The master had ordered him to bring that thief before him within a week. But now he didn't have any leads. If he couldn't find him, he would not only lose his job but also be punished. Fortunately, Melissa came through. She actually managed to find it. At that moment, he really wanted to give his lovely subordinate a kiss. It was a pile of secret documents. If touched without specially made gloves, the magic power would dissipate. And what was deadly was, these documents were trading materials with the Danube Kingdom. Zyalahan first thought of Duke Islington, meant to make him participate in the war. To do this without leaving a trace, it seems Blanche was also involved. He angrily smashed his desk with one punch. "What do you think they'll do with these documents?" Melissa was terrified at this moment, but still had to properly analyze the situation. Duke Islington will probably use these materials to suggest some kind of relationship between the Danube Kingdom and Kandel at the next meeting. After all, it concerns treason. They might even suspect you of being a spy. If you want to prove your innocence, you'll have to participate in the war, unless the nobles protect you. But because Zyalahan didn't want to live anymore, he neither communicated with the nobles nor participated in political activities. And this became the reason for his failure. "Even if I have to go to war, if I can just adjust the timing. Maybe I can still go on that trip with Letty. She will wait for me, welcome me back like she always does." But Zyalahan wouldn't have guessed this battle almost became their eternal farewell. During the course of teaching, Daoxia also couldn't control his feelings, looking panicked at all times, as if making sure Letty would notice. But he absolutely couldn't let her find out. "Letty doesn't love me. I don't want to become distant from her. When much later only I remain. I'll savor this buried feeling." Finally succeeded in helping her unlock higher difficulty invisibility. Daoxia asked Letty about the trip. "Didn't you say you were going to travel alone? When are you going? You also said Duke Kandel doesn't know about this plan." She acknowledged the first statement, but she didn't seem to have said the latter. But it should be fine after all, she and Zyalahan should have broken up by then. "Yes, I just haven't told her yet." "Why do you want to travel alone?" Daoxia knew that even if Duke Kandel was busy, he would still have time for this if she had to go alone. "Do you have something you can't talk about? Or are you planning to break up first?" As soon as the words left her mouth, she cursed herself for being too stupid, knowing they would never separate. Letty didn't speak, just smiled slightly. But this simple smile almost broke Daoxia's composure. He hurriedly turned away with a blushing face. At this moment, Letty was actually very conflicted inside. Daoxia is my benefactor. He treated my illness and helped me a lot with love. Not only is he my magic teacher, but also my friend. So she decided to be honest. It's not exactly breaking up because Zyalahan and I are contract lovers. We signed a 3-month love contract. Listening to Letty explain the whole story, Daoxia understood she had misunderstood. Duke Kandel isn't someone who would be satisfied with contract love. He even evolved his curse for her. To say it's love might not be appropriate enough, it should be reverence. Perhaps even more than that. To be safe, Letty hoped he could keep it secret, not spread any strange rumors. Of course he wouldn't tell anyone. When much later only he remains, he would still show this buried feeling. Meanwhile, Leon, who had been tampered with by Daoxia, was now in heart-wrenching pain, yet kept calling Letty's name. And the spy who escaped from Duke Kandel's mansion was now kneeling before Duke Blanche reporting. Learning that his daughter insisted on staying by Kandel's side, he was furious. "I cannot hand over Blanche's bloodline to Kandel. Since the relationship has already broken down, naturally we can't expect to gain benefits through her marriage. But we also can't let Kandel steal my strongest seed. I was afraid she would stab me in the back like this. So I deliberately suppressed her personality. I didn't expect there would still be a deviation in the end. Listening to the screams coming from the room. How wronged must Leon be? Even if he can't speak, he still calls his sister's name. Since she destroyed her own brother and family, if she still wants happiness, then snatch her back, or killing her works too. I can't let the dog I carefully raised have another chance to bite my neck. So of course I must cut off the roots. Letty came to attend the tea party again. Shalia pouted dissatisfied, until the princess coughed twice as a reminder. She finally squeaked out an apology. Letty had long noticed their little actions, knew it wasn't sincere, so she just perfunctorily accepted the apology. Who knew this action would anger the little green tea again? Just because Lord Elge always revolves around her, this commoner is getting more and more arrogant. Zambier clapped to break the awkwardness, suggesting everyone had enough funds to buy gold and diamonds. The others started discussing enthusiastically. Shalia became even more unhappy seeing this. Can't you see I'm angry? Come comfort me. Just as she was getting really angry, a servant entered through the door. Duke Candel has arrived. He said he would wait for you, told you not to hurry. Letty immediately expressed she would leave first. But the little green tea suddenly stood up saying she would excuse herself first. Then ran away in a flash, leaving the others with questioning faces. Huyana couldn't help complaining. Elge, don't you know Shalia has issues? I absolutely won't like her. The princess had no choice. Expelled noble ladies are too pitiful, besides she hasn't committed any major mistakes yet. Could only apologize and say she would find her to talk. I'll send you, let's go together. Zyalahan, waiting alone, heard footsteps thinking it was Letty, but unexpectedly saw the little green tea happily running towards him. What's going on? Are they close? She lightly grabbed his clothes. Since that commoner rejected my goodwill and was unreasonable to me, I don't need to observe etiquette anymore, Duke. I've missed you so much. Seeing the man frozen in place, she immediately felt good about herself. Who could resist me? I'm so beautiful. I'm the Empire's most gorgeous flower. Duke, you must have missed me too. Actually, I asked Letty about seeing you, but she refused, maybe because she's insecure. Following her words, he asked, insecure about what? Of course about my relationship with you, Duke Zyalahan, isn't it? After all, she's just a commoner, unable to continue with you. Maybe she's jealous. After all, you two can't get married. I naturally wouldn't have any thoughts about a friend's lover. Of course, if you've already broken up, that's different. Shalia felt she had made herself clear enough. Who knew the man would suddenly slap away her greedy hand? Complete nonsense. I don't even know where to start correcting you. First of all, Letty is not a commoner. How could you mistake the Empire's only princess for a commoner? The green tea lady only now realized that Letty was the Blanche family's princess. And Zyalahan didn't give her a chance to be shocked. Moreover, even if she were a commoner, I never planned to break up with her. As long as she's willing, I will be with her forever. If you continue speaking nonsense, I'll rip out your tongue. And I told you, don't call me by my name. The man's aura was ice cold, frightening Shalia to the point of trembling. Only now did she deeply understand why others called Duke Candel a monster. But it was too late. He had already cruelly reached out towards her. Zyalahan raised his hand about to finish off the green tea but was stopped at the last moment. The princess ran over and knelt before the Duke, protecting Shalia. I apologize on her behalf. Please spare her this once. Even at this point, the little green tea hadn't realized the reality, not understanding why the noble princess would humble herself like this. Zyalahan held back again and again. Finally sighed, take her away. Who knew with one glance he would see Letty not far away? Her face was full of shock. Not just at Shalia's behavior, more at the words the man had said. He said he never planned to break up with her and would be with her forever. Aren't we contract lovers? I thought we would just enjoy 3 months together then break up cleanly without any attachments. Therefore I had no reservations with you. In the end, I was the one who played with Zyalahan. What would happen if I told him everything was a misunderstanding? Would he treat me cruelly like he treats others? Would he also raise his blade against me? No, I really have to leave. But her father, who had never given her any warmth, chose this time to have her kidnapped. After realizing she had a misunderstanding with Zyalahan, Letty found it very hard to calm down. She shook off her guards, used invisibility to see Daoxia, hoping he could help her. She told Daoxia everything, except for having a terminal illness. It's better to be honest, right? Say I thought it was just a 3-month contract relationship. She thought telling everything would be good for Zyalahan. After all, they hadn't reached the level of love yet, just liked each other. So ending it cleanly before loving too deeply to part was the most correct choice. What if he wants to continue dating? Impossible, I must leave to travel. Although she knew doing this would disappoint or anger Xialahan. But she didn't want to die in front of him. Daoxia's mouth curved upward. I'm worried about you. Duke Kandel definitely won't let it go if he knows he's been betrayed. As he spoke, he placed his hand on Letty's. If anything happens, just tell me, I'll definitely help you. After the conversation with Daoxia ended, Letty left the temple. She felt like her head was about to explode. Her stomach also felt uncomfortable. Perhaps because she had been invisible for too long, using more spiritual power than she imagined. So much that when she noticed someone behind her, the person was already within arm's reach. It was Jiawen, who had secretly broken into her bedroom before. Princess, long time no see. Please come quietly with me. As he spoke, he pressed a handkerchief soaked in sleeping drug near her nose and mouth. The next moment, a fierce wind swept out, pushing the man's body far away. You think you can take me away? Get lost. But her resistance not only didn't intimidate the man but made him more excited. Watching him approach step by step, Letty knew the situation was bad. Even if she were in good condition, she couldn't win. I don't want the princess to get hurt, just come obediently with me. The man smiled, his seemingly kind eyes instantly revealing a sinister look. Letty was really angry. She suddenly understood Daoxia's warning to her. If you attack without being prepared to kill, then the one who dies will be you. Yes, now was the time for her to hurt others to protect herself, so she gathered wind into blades and sent them towards Jiawen. But the other person wasn't ordinary. He easily dodged all the wind movements like flowing water. You're truly strong, I think I'm falling for you. You can actually use various elemental magic, it's amazing. But still not skilled enough. Letty used magic vines to bind him, but he still looked excited. As he spoke, he broke free from the restraints, swinging his sword to cut the vines. Letty knew she absolutely couldn't beat this person, screaming for help as she turned to run. But the more she ran, the stranger it became. There wasn't a single person here. As if space had been deliberately cleared. Noticing boxes piled in the corner, she decisively hid inside. All the vines were cut down. Jiawen looked up, stretching his muscles. Great, I like strong women. Then unhurriedly began searching for his prey. My princess, where are you? How could I hurt you? On one hand, you're Blanche's heir. On the other hand, I think I've fallen for you. Are you playing hard to get with me now? Letty bit her lip tightly, afraid to let out any breath. She really didn't understand what nonsense this person was talking about. The temple wasn't far from here. If only that guy would go farther away, she could run to the temple. But just as she looked up, she met a pair of crimson eyes. I found you. Is this fate? Accompanied by the clatter of the box and a woman's scream. However, all these sounds couldn't cause even a ripple in this overly quiet district. When Letty woke up again, she had been put in magic restraining handcuffs. She didn't know what she had done wrong, she just wanted to live freely before death. Why wouldn't they let her go? Hearing the prison door open, Letty suddenly sat up. Princess, are you uncomfortable anywhere? Who ordered you, Duke Blanche? You don't even call him father? You're right, he really isn't a good father. My poor princess, you were so amazing in that place, that's wonderful. Letty instinctively backed away. Why didn't you take me to Blanche's mansion? Because Kandel would find us there and I need a warm space just for us two. What nonsense are you talking about? The man's hand slowly moved towards her face. I want to make a suggestion to the princess. Be with me, let's go somewhere far away, live happily. Don't you look forward to how strong our children would be? Her answer was Letty's merciless iron fist, pounding and pounding while he hadn't reacted, using her bloodied hands to pick up the keys from the ground. Quickly running to the door, inserting the key into the lock, hurry. With a click, the door finally opened. However, the person behind her had already reached out his magic hand. The standing Jiawen grabbed Letty's hair and pulled her back. I'm talking to you. Then violently threw her to the ground. Princess, you know it's because you keep trying to escape. I have no choice, right? Then thrust a sword through Letty's thigh, making her scream in agony, her whole body trembling uncontrollably. Save me, it hurts, it hurts. At this moment she missed Xialahan terribly. While at this moment Xialahan had no idea what kind of pain his beloved Letty was suffering, he just felt Letty had been acting strange lately. Feeling there was a strange distance between them. Did I do something wrong? Or is she tired of me? Suddenly, Gerald ran in with a panicked face. "My lord, it seems the young lady has made up her mind to leave the mansion. I've searched everywhere the young lady might go, but she's nowhere to be found." At that moment Zyalahan felt his world collapse. The first person he thought of was Blanche. This is very possible. We'll go to Blanche Mansion. He had already collected enough evidence to overthrow Blanche. He should have overthrown him earlier. But he didn't expect Duke Blanche's acting had reached such a high level. Learning Letty was missing, he acted more surprised than anyone, completely lacking the ruthlessness from when he ordered his daughter to be brought back or killed a few days ago, making even Zyalahan doubt his judgment, especially since the knights really hadn't found anything. "Hopefully this matter really has nothing to do with you." And his certainty made Duke Blanche uneasy. Did this guy find out something? Damn, why are things going so wrong? Unable to get clues from Blanche, Zyalahan commanded the knights to search every inch for Letty. He had lost his initial composure, starting to wonder if Letty really left him. Her recent attitude was different from before. If she really couldn't stand me, hated me and ran to a place I couldn't find. Even if that's the case, nothing would change. "Letty, you understand clearly, don't you? I absolutely won't let you leave. That's why you left without saying goodbye, right? But it doesn't matter where you run to." Gerald appeared again, found traces in the old city district. "Need you to confirm." Zyalahan instantly felt hope, "Because I will definitely find you." Jiawen walked up to Letty, who was crawling on the ground. "Since you're a mage, losing one leg shouldn't matter, right? Please choose, princess. Do you want to lose both legs and be dragged away, or heal your leg and live happily with me?" At this moment Letty had no choice but to burst out magic power to shatter the handcuffs, but she had no magic power left. Moreover, she couldn't win against this crazy person, and with these legs how could she possibly run away? But she must live and go back. She had something to tell Zyalahan. She had the responsibility to purify the curse, give him a happy future. For Zyalahan's sake, she must live and return. Suddenly, there was a crashing sound, followed by intense fighting sounds. "Oh my, it's an intruder." Jiawen immediately grabbed Letty and stood up. "Princess, we have to run." He cursed through gritted teeth. Damn, how did they find this place? However, upon noticing Letty's mocking smile, he finally realized. No wonder you kept releasing magic power all along the way. The next moment he angrily tightened his grip on Letty's neck. "You dare betray me?" Then muttered to himself, "You've been releasing magic power all along, which means you have a lot of magic power. This means you're very strong, princess, you are mine." Strong footsteps slowly approached. "Look, the villain is about to appear." And when the bloodthirsty Zyalahan, who had been rampaging, finally saw the person he had been desperately thinking of, he nearly broke down. Because Letty, whom he had cherished so carefully, was now covered in blood. "You came quite quickly." Jiawen hugged Letty while nuzzling her hair. "Isn't this the White Horse War Ghost?" This behavior was simply challenging Zyalahan's bottom line. The bloody killing intent had now materialized visibly. "Let her go." Although they were far apart, it still made Jiawen have to step back several steps. "Wait, calm down. You want the princess to be safe too, right? Then don't move." Then whispered to Letty, "Princess, just stay still obediently, I won't hurt you." At this moment Letty was drifting in and out of consciousness from the bone-chilling pain. But when she heard Zyalahan ask the man what he wanted, she opened her eyes in terror again. "Have your knights withdraw." Seeing Zyalahan actually did as told, he then demanded safe passage to leave. "As long as you release Letty, I'll agree. Why should I trust you?" As he spoke, his accomplice was approaching Zyalahan with something. Letty screamed desperately, No, Zyalahan, please run away, I beg you." Letty couldn't bear seeing such a proud duke, now obediently surrendering to save her. However, her struggle only made Jiawen more excited. "Can I remove one of your arms? After all, if you swing your sword it would be too terrible. Might even hurt the princess." Letty didn't understand why Zyalahan still wasn't making a move. Wasn't dealing with these people more than enough for him? Was it because she was being threatened? Seeing the sword below already aimed at Zyalahan's arm, Letty quietly gripped the dagger, holding her hostage. How could she scream so desperately? What was her reason for blaming Zyalahan? Was it because he easily gave up his life, or because she told him to leave but he wouldn't listen? No, neither. It was because she loved him. Because she easily gave up her life for herself, who had terminal illness. Zyalahan would be angry at me too, right? Will he blame me? I hope you won't resent me. The moment the dagger pierced her chest, Letty used her last strength to speak. "Zyalahan, I'm sorry. After speaking, she fell straight down. Anyway, I already have terminal illness, please don't be angry. The reason I kept avoiding even when things were developing strangely. Until the end I kept wanting to hide that I had terminal illness, even repeatedly saying I didn't love you was all because I love you. It was all because I was presumptuous in dreaming, so I kept repeatedly telling myself not to fall in love with you, making you not fall in love with me either. I probably knew it would be like this, that's why I did this. And Zyalahan, who held Letty now, couldn't accept such an experience. What should I do? What should I do to protect you? Is it because I couldn't let you go that caused this? Is it because I'm a monster yet coveted what I shouldn't that caused this? But how can you ask me to let you go? To go back to before I met you? It's already too late. My lover, my savior. My Letty.